And there you have it, the U.S. Capitol building, a symbol of America and freedom to the world. Very fitting for today's event.
Absolutely. Today, it looks upon the 1,000 plus demonstrators who have all come to the nation's capital to let freedom ring.
With a rally and parade, practitioners of Falun Dafa will demand an end to a deadly persecution started 26 years ago by the Chinese Communist Party.
It's a persecution of faith, targeting adherents of Falun Dafa, also known as Falun Gong, which is a self-cultivation practice that observes the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance.
I'm Carrie Dunst.
And I'm Fiona G.
In their decades-long journey for freedom, Falun Dafa practitioners have gained the support of Congress, world leaders, including President Donald Trump, and many in the international community.
But the persecution continues today. Mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters imprisoned, tortured, and killed for their belief. The CCP began its persecution on July 20th, 1999, viewing the size of the rapidly growing Falun Dafa as a threat. The number of practitioners eventually surpassed that of Communist Party members. It's estimated that 70 to 100 million people were practicing before the persecution.
The CCP's repression is global. Multiple reports indicate that the Chinese regime has ramped up its targeting of the practice around the world, especially here in the U.S.
And that's the backdrop to today's events. We're starting with a rally until 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and then our coverage will continue with special guests as we await the parade, which will begin around 1:40 p.m. Eastern.
And now let's tune in live to the rally in front of the U.S. Capitol. Speaking now is Alan Adler. Let's listen in.
Today, we stand together as a force for good, joined by distinguished speakers from leading human rights organizations, elected representatives from Congress, and advocates who refuse to remain silent. Each voice raised here echoes across the world. We are not just advocating for Falun Gong. We are defending the soul of humanity itself. This persecution must end. The truth must prevail, and we will not stop until justice is served. I want to thank you all for being here. Your presence is a beacon of hope in the darkness. Our first speaker will be Nick Scarlato, Executive Director, the Committee for Human Rights in North Korea. Let's welcome Mr. Scarlato back.
Sure, I really appreciate it. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for the extraordinarily kind introduction, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, and fellow human rights defenders. I continue to hold Falun Gong practitioners in China, in the United States, and elsewhere in the world in the highest esteem, and to highly treasure and cherish our relationship. A year has passed since I last had the privilege of speaking before this distinguished gathering. Of course, I have attended several public events since, invited by my wonderful Falun Gong friends and representatives. Some may feel disheartened by our lack of progress on human rights improvement in China, North Korea, and other countries where we must continue to fight tyranny and oppression. We will also remember that this year marks the 26th commemoration of the start of the persecution of Falun Gong in China. And yet, Falun Gong believers and practitioners have continued to survive and preserve their beliefs and traditions. Our friends gathered here today are not asking for much. They're simply asking for the fundamental freedom to choose their way of life and their system of beliefs. The odds have been against you. Ruthless Chinese Communist Party campaigns have aimed to eradicate the multi-millennial, ancient, rich traditions that you have preserved and cherished. These traditions incorporate fundamental, universal values, including truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. As a student of China, please allow me to take the liberty of saying that it is you and not the CCP. It is you and not the CCP who define the distinctive features of the Chinese people, the Chinese identity, the Chinese spirit and soul. As a fellow human rights defender, let me assure you that you have our full admiration and support. You truly provide a terrific role model to me personally, to my colleagues who have joined me here today from the U.S. Committee for Human Rights in North Korea, and to all human rights defenders. Falun Gong practitioners have suffered abysmal human rights violations that have no place in the 21st century. Such systematic, targeted, widespread human rights abuses shock the conscience of mankind. Despite having suffered tremendous loss, against all odds, Falun Gong practitioners have managed to preserve and cherish their identity and bypass one of the world's most repressive, most sophisticated systems of coercion, control, surveillance, and punishment. More than a quarter century after the start of the massive CCP campaign and purge aimed at its extermination, Falun Gong has survived and struggled on. Many of you have been born here. Many of you have grown up in families that have been Americans for multiple generations and likely for centuries. I am a naturalized first-generation American. And as an American, I know one thing for certain: freedom to choose one's beliefs and religion, to live by one's code of religious, political, cultural, moral, and ethical values, to improve one's spiritual well-being through exercise, meditation, and moral improvement. These are all fundamental human rights. And these are all fundamental American civil rights, which define the very tenets of our identity and existence. As an American, I know that all three branches of the U.S. government are fully committed and determined to uphold human rights throughout the world. We have the right laws and legal system in place. We Americans have the capacity, the moral fortitude, and the political determination to implement those laws protecting all Falun Gong friends and allies against oppression and crimes against humanity. And as an American civil society representative, I'm fully determined to provide all support that is needed to bring freedom of consciousness, religion, and thought to our Falun Gong brothers and sisters wherever they may live, especially in China. As a representative of U.S. civil society addressing another egregious human rights violator, the Kim family regime of North Korea, I wish to state that no Chinese oppressive campaigns, no North Korean oppressive campaigns, no oppressive campaigns are welcome on U.S. soil. They never will be. Through our elected representatives, we, the American people, including all Falun Gong fellow Americans, stand by the oppressed. We stand for the rights and freedom of Falun Gong practitioners in China and beyond. I'm one of many who are horrified by the atrocities and crimes against humanity the CCP has committed against Falun Gong practitioners for over a quarter century. Systematic forced organ harvesting in particular shocks the conscience of mankind. As a human rights defender, I'm heartened to know that our Congress has passed laws protecting Falun Gong followers and continues to resolutely consider such legislation. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is a tough world we live in. And I must say, together with my HRNK colleagues who are present here today, it is a true honor and a privilege to be standing by your side, all Falun Gong brothers and sisters. Your resilience, your tenacity, and your relentless struggle bring hope to all of us. The struggle will be long, strenuous, and dangerous. And truth, compassion, tolerance, and human rights will always prevail. We shall prevail together and soon celebrate the fall of tyrants and the triumph of the values we hold so dear. Thank you very much, and wonderful, wonderful meeting you again. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Scott Perry from Pennsylvania. Mr. Perry is a U.S. Congressman and decorated Brigadier General with over 30 years of military service. He's a powerful voice for freedom, faith, and the Constitution. We welcome him back. I'm so sorry that it's Congressman Ryan from New York. It's Congressional 18th District that'll be speaking.
Good afternoon. I'm not my colleague, Mr. Perry, but I know he'll be here shortly. And we work together on really important legislation on behalf of so many here today and so many around the world. So I'm sure you'll hear from him shortly, and it was my honor to work with him in a bipartisan way on a bill that I'll talk more about in a moment. My name is Congressman Pat Ryan. I served as a U.S. Army officer, risked my life for this great country for many reasons, but central to that was what we're all here today to talk about, which is freedom. And it's really, really an honor to be with you all today. Again, I was proud to be here last year to mark the 25th year of work and rallying and efforts, and now to be here again for the 26th year on what is definitely another warm day. I remember it was similarly warm last year, but a beautiful day with clear blue skies, now a little bit of breeze, and a true unifying day for this movement. And so I want to thank each of you, especially standing there today in this heat. On behalf of so many millions more, your voices and you being here matters a great deal, and I'm honored to be with you and in your presence. It is a testament to your deep, deep commitment to the principles of Falun Gong. I'm especially honored to be with you all today because I proudly represent the global headquarters of the Falun Gong movement in Dragon Springs, in Orange County, in New York, north of New York City. I've had the privilege of visiting many times, spending time with a whole host of community members and leaders and practitioners, and it is such a special, special place, not only physically beautiful, but morally and spiritually such a rich and beautiful, beautiful place. And it's my great honor to represent that, and by extension, I would argue to represent all of you in some small way and the work that you're doing. Your unwavering adherence to the values that we see here so powerfully today of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance truly serve as a beacon for everyone in our great country of the United States of America, certainly everyone in my district in the Hudson Valley, and I would argue every human around the world. Those values and your work to advance them is a beacon at a very difficult and dangerous time, as our prior speaker so eloquently said. That's why I'm particularly proud at this moment where we see such egregious challenges and risks and attacks, frankly, on human rights and those values of truthfulness and compassion and forbearance. I'm so proud to have co-led critical, pivotal, bipartisan legislation, the Falun Gong Protection Act. It's the landmark piece of legislation in the Congress to codify those protections and to hold accountable the egregious violations against the Falun Gong community that will not be tolerated, specifically to stand united, to hold organ traffickers, who you all know have been systematically for decades conducting these incredibly grave violations of human rights, to hold them accountable fully for their reprehensible crimes, and to make a statement that in the United States of America and around the world, we will not tolerate those actions. I'll continue to speak out with your all's help and to amplify your voices without hesitation or reservation against any restriction of human rights, and specifically the persecution of religious groups and the Falun Gong especially. Any threat to members of my community, which I consider you all representing Dragon Springs, is a threat that I take personally, and I will stand up and fight to protect each of you. So if there's anything that I can be doing in my team, we work very, very closely with community leaders and members in terms of addressing issues of freedom of movement here to our great country for all Falun Gong practitioners. And it's our honor to help with anybody that is having any issues related to that, any issues with human rights violations for you or your families. Please come to us, and it's our honor to stand with you and to fight on your behalf. The final thing that I'd like to say before I conclude, I was very honored last year, and I had my whole team, my whole congressional staff, we were warmly welcomed at a performance of Shen Yun just on the other side of D.C. At the Kennedy Center. My wife was there as well. And I just want to commend the community. And I know many of those great performers train at Dragon Springs in the district, and I've been able to see them, their dedicated practice and discipline and their values on display. That was such a special moment for me and my staff and my family, a spectacular demonstration of why we must preserve the rich arts, culture, and history of Falun Gong and traditional Chinese culture, and why practitioners of Falun Gong, so admirably committed to inner peace, deserve to live freely and without fear. So I want to especially commend those performers and reiterate my commitment that Shen Yun should and must be able to perform in every corner of the United States and around the world, and we'll continue to fight to make sure that that happens as any threats present to that. So thank you again for the opportunity and honor to speak with you, to represent you and fight on your behalf. And thank you each for being here, again, especially in this warm weather. And I don't think he's here yet, but I do want to, again, commend and thank my colleague, Mr. Perry, my bipartisan partner in the Falun Gong Protection Act, and ask that each of us, we now need to push the Senate to pass this bill. We passed it through the House of Representatives. We need to pass it through the Senate, and ask you to all continue to pray and push and work for that to make its way through the Senate. So thank you all, and have a fantastic day and continuation of this powerful event. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Mohammed El-Senussi. Mr. Senussi is a powerful force for freedom. As a USCRIF commissioner and global faith leader, he unites people across religions to stand up for justice and push back against oppressive regimes. Please welcome him.
Hello, hello, and good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. And I really appreciate your courage and bravery of being here. It's quite hot here, but I think it is worth for this important cause. So good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Muhammad Al-Sanusi, and I am a commissioner at the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, or USERV, a bipartisan legislative branch agency that monitor religious freedom abroad. And we make recommendations, we make policy recommendations to the US government, to the President of the United States, to the Secretary of the State, and to the Congress. Thank you, Falun Dafa, Falun Gong, Association of Washington, D.C., for inviting USERV to be with you today. United States Commission on International Religious Freedom strongly condemns the Chinese government's reprehensible mistreatment of Falun Gong practitioners and urges the United States government to prioritize religious freedom in China. For more than 25 years, United States Commission on International Religious Freedom has recommended, we recommended that the US State Department designate China as a country of particular concern, for it is particularly severe violations of religious freedom, including violations against Falun Gong practitioners. Year after year, harrowing stories of the Chinese government's abuses against Falun Gong practitioners repeat themselves. We have seen surveillance. We have seen harassment, fines, detentions. We have seen imprisonment and torture, medical neglect, dehumanizing treatment, and even death. In December, China sentenced a husband and wife to 10 years in prison each for possessing and sharing Falun Gong materials. In April of this year, a 71-year-old Falun Gong practitioner died in Chinese prison, reportedly following complications from torture. So torture is going on in China prisons against the Falun Gong practitioners. So, dear friends, freedom of religion or belief is a right all countries must preserve and protect. And the United States must continue to lead as a powerful voice for all those who live under religious repression. So I want to thank you again for your commitment, for your courage, for advancing the cause of religious freedom, not only for the Falun Gong practitioner communities, but you are a voice for every persecuted person around the world. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Rick Fisher, Senior Fellow at the International Assessment and Strategy Center. He's a leading expert on China's military and global strategy. He shines the spotlight on the CCP's threats to freedom, especially its war on faith and human rights. So, welcome, Mr. Fisher.
Falun Dafa how? Falun Dafa how? Thank you. It is an honor to be before you. It is an honor to share this heat. Why is it so hot? Because the love in your hearts for your family, for your colleagues, for the world shines so bright. And your determination to stand up before the greatest criminal gang in history, the history of mankind, radiates so strongly. What about this criminal gang? The Chinese Communist Party. It has just passed a membership of 100 million. 100 million who are required to crush our freedom. Eventually, to achieve hegemony over this planet, and then hegemony over our solar system. It is an honor, again, to stand before you. Those who have for 26 years challenged and stood up to this criminal gang. Your sacrifices are known best to you, your families, and your friends. I can never personally describe what you've endured, but I can only state my personal appreciation for your determination, your bravery to stand up to this gang, to never falter in front of its cruel, perverse, barbaric persecution. That you are here today is a testament to your strength. That you stand up to this criminal gang. You offer its members a chance to leave, to join the rest of the world in its tolerance of human rights, political belief. I can tell you only that from the perspective of my own study and investigation of the last 30 years, that the Chinese Communist Party is...
And if you're just tuning in now, we are watching the 2025 rally and parade to end the persecution of Falun Dafa. For now, let's go to NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley. He's live on the ground there at the rally. Jack, tell us more. What are officials saying about this ongoing persecution of Falun Dafa?
Well, officials are condemning it. We have across the board from different federal agencies, the State Department, the Foreign Affairs arm of the executive branch, sending a statement that says, quote, "For over 26 years, the CCP has waged a campaign of repression against practitioners of Falun Gong and their families. We again call on the CCP to end its campaign to eradicate Falun Gong." This week, we also spoke to several lawmakers on Capitol Hill, all in a bipartisan way condemning this persecution that's been going on now for 26 years. And with particular condemnation when it comes to the Chinese Communist Party's live forced organ harvesting as a means of persecuting this spiritual group. Take a look.
Persecution of Falun Gong practitioners by the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government is something that I don't support, obviously. I condemned it. And I will continue to stand with the Falun Gong practitioners. And I look at it as a form of their religious practices, and Chinese government looks at it as a form of threat. I think that's completely wrong.
China has grossly violated the human rights of its people and the Uyghurs, but also others. And in fact, every single member of Chinese society does not have the freedom that they deserve to enjoy.
The government of Communist China is despicable to the people who live in China and to people around the world. So there's no human rights in China. There's no opportunity for success in China. There's no opportunity for individual thought. So I'm appreciative that people have basically the guts to stand up against a government like that, and Americans and anybody that believes in human rights, we have to stand with them.
When it comes to the persecution going on in China, if you look at the way they're basically executing slave labor, how they're manipulating markets, how they're subduing the people, how they basically have no human rights. That's as perverse a government as you can get when you take away people's rights.
And we know that Chinese influence is continuing to expand, and that if we don't call out human rights abuses from a country that is seeking to expand its sphere of influence across the world, it really challenges American safety and security and prosperity. And so it's both the right thing to do from a human rights perspective, but it also is the right thing to do in terms of ensuring American interest in the long term.
Since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, I can remember China always abusing people in their country, taking advantage of them, paying them very, very low wages. Communist countries don't last, but they've lasted a long time, and it's unfortunate for people that have to live under that regime. A regime that imprisons people, kills people to keep power. It's just hard to overcome that.
We've got to support human rights and stand by folks who are being persecuted and prosecuted and maligned around the world.
The Chinese Communist Party, they're not our friends. They're not, and they treat their people as if they're disposable assets, and they're not. I mean, all people are created in the image of God, and we need to do everything we can to prevent these types of horrific crimes from taking place. I encourage all people to try to prevent war crimes and crimes against humanity. It doesn't matter what group they are. That's something that should be a bipartisan thing. And when you start politicizing these types of horrible things, it leads to no good.
Organ harvesting is cruel, immoral, and should be stopped. I'm not sure what part the U.S. can play in that. We've got multiple issues with China, and I think if we just continue to work the entire waterfront, freedom wins in the end.
There you saw lawmakers standing strong condemning the Chinese Communist Party's persecution of Falun Gong, and already they've passed two bills in the House, the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act and the Falun Dafa Falun Gong Protection Act, both of which seek to sanction those involved in the Chinese regime's forced organ harvesting of prisoners of conscience, particularly the main targets, Falun Gong. And now here at the rally, there's many people out here braving the heat, mind you. It is over 90 degrees and humid. Not a day many people would like to be outside, but still they're here persevering in the face of this. Back to you.
Well, Jack, some very powerful statements from lawmakers there, some of which was actually echoed by Representative Pat Ryan just on that stand behind you a little while ago. Keep the reports coming and try to stay in the shade if you can. Jack, thank you. And we're now going to tune back into the rally to end the persecution of Falun Dafa.
General, and he understands the evil of the CCP against the people of China, freedom lovers in the diaspora, and the threat that it poses to the United States as well. H.R. 1503 was introduced by Congressman Chris Smith from New Jersey. I'm sure you know that Chairman Smith is a legendary hero of us all, fighting for human rights and religious freedom issues, as well as for the unborn for decades. It's a great idea to let Congressman Perry, Congressman Ryan, Chairman Smith, and all the co-sponsors know that you appreciate their caring about this issue. And if your congressman was not a co-sponsor, get in touch with them and ask them why. Why were they not this is well-deserved sanctions for the CCP. Congressman Perry's press release said the Falun Gong Protection Act imposes sanctions on those who participate in or facilitate forced organ harvesting. The bill directs the Secretary of State to determine whether CCP's persecution of Falun Gong constitutes crimes against humanity or genocide, alongside a required report on CCP organ transplant policies, and it makes the U.S. policy to avoid any cooperation with the CCP as long as its forced organ transplant industry continues. And I think, very importantly, the bill says that within a year, a list of all United States grants over the past 10 years that have supported research on organ transplantation in the PRC or in collaboration between a Chinese and United States entity must be reported. I'm thinking of U.S. medical colleges and universities. Where are they getting their organs from? The bill is now sitting in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, so it's time to pressure your senators as well. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee has scheduled a hearing next Tuesday on the status of democracy and human rights in Hong Kong. So they're headed in the right direction when it comes to CCP human rights violations. We urge them to pass the Falun Gong Protection Act swiftly, too. Secondly, the CCP attacks Shen Yun along with Falun Gong, and that represents a grave escalation of methods of infiltration to subvert Falun Gong's voice and influence, warning America about the CCP and threats to freedom. Shen Yun is a powerful, effective conveyor of truth because it transcends factual information and statistics. The power of art in advocacy seems to have been discovered, unfortunately, by the CCP. So they are targeting the creative and beautiful work of Shen Yun, which is described as follows. Shen Yun showcases the beauty and spiritual depth of authentic Chinese culture before it was almost destroyed by communism. So we really need to stop that kind of escalation. One of the methods used by the CCP to demonize Falun Gong and Shen Yun is the New York Times newspaper. The New York Times investigation of Falun Gong and Shen Yun is appalling. I would stop getting the New York Times, but I stopped getting it many years ago. But you need to think about that if you're reading the New York Times. The Falun Dafa Information Center concludes an article that says 12 things to know about the New York Times biased and defamatory investigation by saying the CCP could not have imagined a better ally than the Times in its latest campaign to eliminate Falun Gong globally. What a terrible reputation to have. The newspaper that does the Chinese Communist Party's dirty work. Finally, I want to share with you another example of using the power of the arts in advocacy. I have to admit, I'm a baby boomer generation, and I like reruns on television. A few days ago, I stumbled on an old episode of the television show Diagnosis Murder, with Dick Van Dyke as Mark Sloan, a doctor who helps the police with murder cases. In the episode Living on the Streets Can Be Murder, that first aired in 1996, the murders were of homeless people, and it was found out that their organs were being harvested for rich patients of a greedy, immoral doctor. I probably saw that episode back in 1996, before a lot of you guys were born, and several times on reruns. But this was the first time knowing about organ harvesting as the reality of the CCP, and not only an evil on a fictional television show. I plan to urge my friends who don't yet understand the depth of evil of the CCP to find and watch that show, and then realize that this horror is happening to thousands and thousands and thousands of people today, not primarily for money, but for power and getting rid of truth tellers. Continue to use your voices, speak truth, fight for good legislation, and thank the legislators when they make good bills. And above all, don't lose hope, because there is a God who is above all earthly powers and thrones and regimes, who loves you and who created the nations of the world, including China, for his purposes. And he will not let his purposes be thwarted by evil men forever. End the CCP. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Serkan Tas, Associate Director for Chinese Studies at the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. He is one of the main people in charge of exposing China's assault on all faiths. Please welcome him.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting us to be here today in solidarity with the millions of people who continue to courageously practice their faith despite unprecedented persecution. Today, together, we commemorate 26 years since the Chinese Communist Party's brutal crackdown on Falun Gong practitioners in July 1999. What began as a peaceful spiritual movement centered on truthfulness, compassion, tolerance has endured more than a century of systematic persecution, torture, and industrial-scale forced organ harvesting. Since the CCP banned Falun Gong, religious freedom conditions in China have only gone from bad to worse, with Falun Gong practitioners facing the brunt of state's persecution of religious groups. Chinese authorities have relentlessly harassed, surveilled, fined, detained, imprisoned, denied medical care, and tortured to death Falun Gong practitioners for their religious activities. In 2024, we learned of the first known survivor of China's forced organ harvesting, Qing Peiming, a Falun Gong practitioner who discovered that segments of his liver and a portion of his lung had been surgically removed while in prison. This confirmed what has been documented for years, that the CCP operates one of the world's largest organ transplant programs while having extremely low rates of voluntary organ donation. This persecution has expanded beyond China's borders and beyond Falun Gong practitioners alone. The CCP is now collecting genetic data from Uyghurs as part of a forced halal organ transplant program with DNA-matched so-called donors. Most alarmingly, the CCP plans to triple the number of organ harvesting facilities in Xinjiang by 2030. We must remain vigilant as China's persecution of Falun Gong extends far beyond its borders. Chinese authorities regularly engage in transnational repression, including within the United States. We sadly see that the repression against Falun Gong practitioners has ramped up with fines, home raids, and detentions across the globe. The United States has designated China as a country of particular concern for religious freedom violations, sanctioned government officials involved in gross human rights abuses, and established coalitions to address China's violations. The House of Representatives has passed the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act to combat these most heinous crimes. However, we must do more. Medical organizations must impose moratoriums on publications from Chinese transplant surgeons. Governments must pressure international bodies to adopt more proactive positions and address their own complacency, while utilizing sanctions against complicit surgeons. Human rights groups must highlight the evidence and express their grave concerns about the vulnerability of prisoners of conscience. On behalf of the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, I want to thank you again for your courage and tireless determination to advocate for freedom in China. We will continue to fight to spread the truth about the perils of communism and hold the CCP accountable for its horrific abuses. We cannot and will not stop until Falun Gong practitioners and members of all religious faiths can worship freely in China without fear of persecution. Thank you all.
Our next speaker is Piero Tozzi. He is with Congressman Chris Smith's office. He's a senior advisor, and both have been steadfast allies since 1999 when the persecution began. They've both been tirelessly fighting for religious freedom and human rights. Please welcome him back again.
Well, thank you. And on behalf of the Congressional Executive Commission on China Chair and Co-Chair Dan Sullivan and Chris Smith, and our CEC commissioners, greetings. Over a quarter century ago, Chinese Communist Party General Secretary Jiang Zemin began the full-scale persecution of the Falun Gong movement. Today, under another General Secretary, Xi Jinping, the brutal persecution continues. Many in the United States who thought that engagement with the government of the People's Republic of China would help change China have come to the late realization that China under Xi Jinping is a threat to world peace and also to the people of China who suffer under communist rule. They often say, however, that things were different in the so-called reform era under Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao. To that, I say no. You are just blind to the true nature of the communist regime. True, the degree and breadth of persecution may have been less. The technological capacity for an Orwellian surveillance state may have been less. And the need to maintain a smiley face for Western investors may have been greater. But the nature of the regime is and was the same. A gangster regime designed to maintain the political power of the Chinese Communist Party and to stifle the growth of any civil society, religious, or ideological alternative to the regime. Indeed, if anyone can say anything good about Xi Jinping, is that he ripped the mask off of the Chinese Communist Party and revealed its true monstrous nature for all to see. And what I point them to when they question me and ask, was the reform era really bad, is the persecution of the Falun Gong, which began more than a quarter of a century ago. For over 25 years, the Falun Gong has been the proverbial canary in the coal mine, warning those who would listen of the toxic danger of the Chinese Communist Party. For the Falun Gong, the persecution was not a difference in degrees, for the oppression has always been constant. And of all the human rights abuses inflicted upon the Falun Gong, there is one that stands out more than any other: forced organ harvesting. We at the CECC, under Chris Smith's leadership, have focused extensively on revealing this crime. In March of last year, the CECC held a hearing entitled "Stopping the Crime of Organ Harvesting: What More Must Be Done?" While the focus of the CCP's organ harvesting brutality has now shifted to Uyghurs and other persecuted, predominantly Muslim groups in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, let us not forget that this crime was first directed at Falun Gong practitioners. Once again, this Congress, the House of Representatives, passed the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act of 2025, H.R. 1503, authored by CECC co-chairman Chris Smith and joined by Representative Keating of Massachusetts. This bill is the organ harvesting bill which has the most realistic chance of being passed and sent on to the President's desk for signature, but the Senate must act. The bill would bar entry by perpetrators of forced organ harvesting and subject them to sanctions. It would also require the Secretary of State to report on organ transplant abuses. While the bill encompasses all countries, the focus really is on one country, and that is the People's Republic of China under Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party. As the bill has passed the House by a vote of 406 to 1, it is now up to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to mark up this bill so that it can advance to the Senate's floor and then on to the President's desk. Rep. Smith will also be leading, again, a letter calling upon the State Department to use its Rewards for Justice program to seek information on who in the Chinese Communist Party is complicit in the heinous practice of organ harvesting so that they can be held accountable. And I also commend Congressman Perry's bipartisan H.R. 1540, the Falun Gong Protection Act. We heard from Congressman Ryan earlier, the bill's co-sponsor. Finally, I note that in his testimony before the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Secretary of State Marco Rubio voiced support for our efforts in the House to end the horror of forced organ harvesting. And just yesterday, the State Department made a very clear statement calling upon the Chinese Communist Party to stop persecuting the Falun Gong. Thus, I'm optimistic that Congress, working with this administration, can help end this crime against humanity. Thank you all for your commitment to human rights and religious freedom for all. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Nina Shea, Director for the Center for Religious Freedom at the Hudson Institute. Ms. Shea has been one of the strongest voices for religious freedom and for Falun Gong since 1999. A former USCIRF commissioner and now director at Hudson Institute, she's exposed persecution worldwide and stood boldly for the rights of the oppressed year after year.
Thank you very much from the Hudson Institute Center for Religious Freedom. I was here last year, I was here the years before that, and I was here, I think it was 20 or 25, maybe even 26 years ago, because I so believe in your cause. It was 26 years ago today that started this campaign, this genocidal campaign against Falun Gong in China. It started with a decree that to eliminate, the genocidal term, eliminate Falun Gong by President Jiang of China at that time. It has continued since. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Falun Gong practitioners have been imprisoned and tortured and disappeared simply for reasons of their beliefs and religious practices, their spiritual practices. There, in around 2006, reports started reaching us here in Washington that those who had disappeared may have been killed to order for their internal organs. This is an atrocity that is beyond belief and cannot be accepted. The threat to Falun Gong and other forbidden groups in China is coming here. I am shocked that after these decades, the CCP has its agents here and are threatening with bombs and trying to strip IRS tax exemption from Shen Yun, who are attacking attacking them physically and in their characters. I personally was at the Kennedy Center when this year when there was earlier a bomb threat and it had to be evacuated and swept. This is just unacceptable. It's un-American. It's a denial of religious freedom and a denial of free speech. So I am here again to stand with you in solidarity, and you have my commitment. I will continue writing and speaking out on what has befallen you, purely through the malicious and malevolent acts of this Chinese Communist Party dictatorship. Thank you very much.
And you're watching the rally and parade to end the persecution of Falun Dafa in Washington, D.C. And let's go now to NTD's Jack Bradley, who's live on the ground for us in Washington. As we said, Jack, you've spoken to some of the Falun Gong practitioners there on the rally. What are they telling you?
All right, so I have one Falun Gong practitioner with me right now. She's been practicing Falun Gong for decades, a couple decades, almost 30 years now. Her name is Ronnie Tan. And she's going to share with us her story. So, Ronnie, first off, how has Falun Dafa impacted your life?
Yeah, I think it benefited me both physically and mentally. So I have a healthier body, and also I have a peaceful mind and a happier life. It's a big impact on me.
And talk to us a bit about when the persecution began in 1999. The Falun Gong practitioners were pushed to the opposite side of in China. They were persecuted, and you've experienced some of that as well. Can you tell us your story?
Yeah, so because all the media is under control of the Chinese government, and the Falun Gong practitioners has no channels to express themselves to tell the truth. It's not like what the media side. And we have to send out some flyers to the people. And because of this, I was detained and arrested and detained in different places for about 2 years and experienced kind of tortures there.
Can you talk to us a bit about the tortures that you experienced?
Yeah, so for myself, I was hung up with rope and beaten simultaneously by several people for several hours, and also was handcuffed around the tree in very cold winter night for several hours, and also was beaten and handcuffed at a very uncomfortable position and beaten simultaneously until I passed out. And insultation and beaten, it happened daily actually in the detained center or the labor camp. It can happen anytime.
And this only happened to the Falun Gong practitioners inside of that prison and forced labor camp that you were in, not the other prisoners. Is that right?
It happened to all, but more severe for the Falun Gong practitioners. Falun Gong practitioners are more restricted, there are more rules for them, like Falun Gong practitioners were not allowed to talk to each other and not allowed to, sometimes it was forbidden to see their family members, it was deprived, and many other rules. It's much more restricted and severely persecuted than the other, compared with others. And also, for every practitioner where I was detained, there are 2 other people will watch you 24 hours. Yeah.
And you said that you saw some practitioners actually killed inside of the forced labor camp.
Yeah. So in the detention center where I was detained, as I know, there are 4 Falun Gong practitioners who were persecuted to death. And the way they torture them is by the forced feeding. That's not to save their life, it just torture them. And what they feed is the high concentration salt, which will cause the death of them. And in the forced labor camp I was detained, there are 3 practitioners who were killed there, as I know. And 1 female practitioner is right several days before I was released.
And so what kept you persevering through all of this? Obviously the goal was to get practitioners to renounce their faith.
Yeah. So they torture us. The purpose is to force the practitioners to de-announce Falun Gong, de-announce their belief. Yeah, that's their purpose.
And then how has your faith guided you through all of this?
I think it gave me the strength to go through all the tortures and still keep a positive life attitude even after this. I think it gave me the strength. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. Really appreciate it. Ronnie Tan, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys, back to you.
Thank you, Jack. What a powerful and disturbing testimony, and she's so brave to be able to share that with us. And now we're going to be, and we heard from a range of speakers, very powerful human rights advocates, members of Congress from both sides of the aisle, showing their support and calling for an end to the 26-year-long persecution of Falun Dafa.
And as we just heard there, Carrie, this repression is global. The CCP has for years targeted practitioners outside of China, even right here in the United States.
Unbelievably. And exactly about that, yeah. And next, the parade. So all of these people that are queuing up, they're watching with their banners, they're going to march through D.C., featuring hopeful, solemn, and triumphant displays, music. We're expecting to reach our location at Pennsylvania Avenue in about 1:40 p.m. Eastern. So let's go over the parade route now.
The parade starts at the National Mall on Capitol Hill. It heads up 4th Street and turns on Pennsylvania Avenue, heading northwest towards the White House. From there, it passes the Federal Trade Commission, the National Archives Foundation, and the U.S. Department of Justice. The parade ends at Freedom Plaza.
And now we're going to bring in our guest to go deeper into the persecution as we await the parade to begin. We're joined by Lishai Lemesh. He's Master of Ceremonies for Shen Yun Performing Arts, an American-based, world-renowned classical Chinese dance company founded by Falun Dafa practitioners, as well as Dr. Jessica Russo, a board member of Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting, an organization that's working to expose and end the brutal and deadly persecution of forced organ harvesting in China, an issue directly affecting Falun Dafa practitioners. Lishai, starting with you, it seems like every year more and more people are coming out to speak and show their support from both sides of the aisle, from really all walks of life. What are your reactions when you see the scale of this in front of the Capitol building?
Well, of course, feel a lot of gratitude for those people who came out, because we know it's actually not that easy. The Chinese Communist Party puts a lot of resources to keep politicians and media and other entities silent about the persecution of Falun Gong. It's one of their biggest objectives is to silence people. So we know that a lot of these congressmen, human rights organizations even, who speak out, they've done it in spite of getting pressure not to. So a lot of gratitude, at the same time hoping that more people will be encouraged by this. And also, frankly, I know how much work went into reaching out to those people over many, many years of telling them about the persecution. We heard from Nina Shea, she's been out there like 25 years in a row or something like that. These people have supported us for a long, long time. And I think it would be really nice if one day we don't have to have a rally like this. We can have a rally to thank them for their support and say, hey, Falun Gong is not persecuted anymore. Let's go to China and have a party to celebrate that. That's what I would really like, but in the meantime, we really appreciate their support.
And that would be quite a scene. Dr. Russo, same question to you to start things off. How do you feel, seeing these speakers out there, those lawmakers? Representative Pat Ryan had a very powerful testimony there.
Yes, it's so encouraging. And just like Lishai was saying, this is not easy for these people to come forward, especially politicians. You're in the limelight and you speak out against China, that can be really dangerous. And it's scary if you're a lone voice, right? So it's really great that there are more voices now. And this is a group that needs a lot of support. These are brave individuals, but they're also incredibly vulnerable. You know, not just in China, but outside of China, because the Chinese government is really hoping that this group will die completely. So it's great to see this.
Yeah, and Li Shai, as the host of Shen Yun, I know that you have experienced firsthand, not just obviously members who have come from China and shared their accounts of being persecuted, but actual persecution here on U.S. soil. Could you elaborate on some of the things that you guys go through day to day that really don't even make the news, nobody hears about it, but the constant pressure that you're under?
Yeah, so what we're facing now, people are calling transnational repression or foreign malign influence. When we started noticing it, when Shen Yun was established around 2006 in our first tour, there was no term for it. We were the first ones really who were like, hey, what is going on? The Chinese Communist Party is trying to stop us. I think to kind of unpack this, Shen Yun is based in New York. It was established by Falun Gong practitioners. The performers are Falun Gong practitioners, including people. We actually did a survey. 92 people in our company experienced persecution themselves or with their families in China. So the story of the persecution of Falun Gong in China is one that's really dear to our hearts. And we try to tell it on stage as part of the performance. It's not a huge part, but it's definitely there every show. And because of that, because these are Falun Gong practitioners, because we expose all these atrocities and other reasons too in terms of revival of traditional Chinese culture that the CCP has been trying to wipe out for 75 years, the Chinese Communist Party really doesn't like it. So from day one, they tried to stop us. First, we had Chinese ambassadors and consul generals writing to theaters, trying to get them to cancel the show, emails, phone calls, visits. That didn't work. And so then they tried hacking our website and stopping ticket sales and smearing us online with online commentators, the 50-cent army it's called. That really didn't work. They tried pulling our media sponsors and our advertisers. That didn't work. Then we had maybe the most violent one was they slashed the tires on our buses in such a way that the tire would not deflate right away, but would explode on the highway at high speed. So this is attempted murder, not just of Shen Yun performers, but of all the people around, innocent bystanders. This happened multiple times in Canada, in California, and this went on, and then the last 2 or 3 years, and there's about 150 of these cases. I'm just kind of breezing through it.
It's shocking. It really is.
So we've seen an escalation the last couple of years, and this goes back to a document and leaked information that we got out of China about 2-3 years ago saying that the Communist Party has basically recognized that they failed in their attempt to crush Falun Gong and crush Shen Yun outside of China. And in order to succeed in this battle, what they've created, this battle against us, they really need to think more creatively. And so they're looking at the West and they say, well, what has traction in the West, in America right now? They pick specifically 2 things, lawfare and media. And these work hand in hand. So first you have filing of frivolous lawsuits attacking Shen Yun, attacking our headquarters at Dragon Springs in New York. And then these get picked up by the media and they become hit pieces. What is going on with Shen Yun? Are they, abusing performers, this kind of stuff? And really, it doesn't matter when the lawsuit gets thrown out, as in one case, for example, an environmental lawsuit got thrown out what's called with prejudice, which means you can't even file it again because it's so baseless. It doesn't matter. The media doesn't report that. They report some controversy related to Shen Yun. And there's spies, multiple spies. I think Nina Shea just mentioned one of them. Spies that try to undermine Shen Yun's nonprofit status, people following performers, death threats, a whole host of things. And I think what's really important to realize is this is an American company. Yeah. These are the majority of the performers and staff members are American citizens, born or naturalized. We have performers from all over the world, but we're an American company, a nonprofit organization. We perform at Lincoln Center, at Kennedy Center, all over the country, all over the world. And here we have the biggest dictatorship in human history going after us in our schools, in our families, in our workplace, in our backyards, spying on us, slashing our tires, sending us death threats, bomb threats, threatening to throw our kids off of buildings, all this stuff right here in America. If they can come after Shen Yun, they can come after Falun Gong practitioners, people who've fought the CCP and resisted for over 2 decades now, they can go after anybody. They won't even know what hit them.
Well, Li Shai, you bring up the issue that Shen Yun was facing these threats, right? It was these death threats, bomb threats. I remember you held a press conference a couple of months back that I went to, and you guys handed out these packets to each reporter, and it listed dozens and dozens and dozens of instances of all of these, sometimes identical bomb threats that were emailed to different theaters to try and get them to stop Shen Yun performances at those venues. And you were actually at the Kennedy Center when they received their bomb threat. And that's the cultural center, of the United States. And now you're calling for a thorough investigation into that.
Yeah, so that happened in February when we were performing. We had a 12-show run at the Kennedy Center, just a few minutes away from where the rally and a parade is taking place. And we're getting ready for our first show. And around 10:45 in the morning, as we're setting up for the show, the fire alarm goes off. And we're like, okay, fire drill, we walk out. And then the way they were escorting us out, and then they come over to the loudspeaker and say, this is not a drill, evacuate immediately. It was multiple buildings, 6 different performing arts companies, directors, orchestra members from all across the artistic spectrum. We all had to go outside. We stood outside in the cold in about 20 degrees for 3 hours as the police and a K-9 searched everything, did a very thorough job, and nobody knew what was going on. And I grabbed the reporter who was there asking people, what's happening? I said, do you want to know what's happening? I can tell you. We've gotten a death threat. And then indeed the theater confirmed it, the Metro Police confirmed it, and that was identical to about 50 other ones that we got this last tour alone, saying we're going to blow this place to rubble, we're going to come in and shoot people. Now, it's important to understand these are pranks. These are scare tactics. There's never been anything. We take it really seriously. We have to for our performers, for the audience members, for everybody. But it's just an attempt to stop Shen Yun from performing. And this goes back to what the CCP is so afraid of. Because actually later, when this happened in Taiwan, they were able to trace the threats back to Huawei Research Institute in Xi'an in China. And so we suspected all along these were coming from the CCP or an agent of the CCP or a fellow traveler. But here they trace it directly back to China. And so, yes, we're calling on the Department of Justice. We're calling on our federal authorities to investigate, find out who's behind these, because it's not just the theaters. That's bad enough. We've also gotten them at our headquarters in New York at Dragon Springs, sometimes on a daily basis. And they're really, really lurid and grotesque threats of what they're going to do to young women. And I have daughters at home. That's not easy to read. And threatening just burn congressmen who support us. Some of these people we saw at the rally, they said we're going to kill them and leave their bodies on the streets of Washington. President Trump, the Heritage Foundation, I could go on and on. They threaten all these people just for supporting Falun Gong or Shen Yun. And so it just shows you how far the Chinese Communist Party will go to control what we here in America can and cannot watch, can and cannot believe, can and cannot talk about even.
It's so brazen that obviously we're covering the persecution in China, but it's so brazen what's happening here in the U.S. And when we think about the international community, Dr. Russo, this concept of transplant tourism, I mean, it's something that, it's a crime that really you can't even think about.
Yes.
And this is really the focus of the work with Doctors Against Forced Organ
Mm-hmm.
Harvesting. Maybe, and I do want to ask you about the Falun Gong Protection Act as well, as a means to counteracting what's been going on. But maybe you could just share with us about the Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting and what your research has been showing.
Sure. So we're an organization that formed in 2006, and this was when allegations were coming out about forced organ harvesting. And since then, research has been showing us over and over again for the last 26 years that this is happening on a massive scale. So at first what we were hearing were various stories, like there was a nurse from China, her pseudonym is Annie, and she reported that her husband had disclosed to her that he harvested corneas from 2,000 living Falun Gong practitioners, and each one died. And he had symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, and he was really suffering. And we were hearing other stories like this. And then we heard a story from Israel. This is a heart transplant surgeon, and he heard from his patient that his patient had an appointment to go to China in 2 weeks and get a heart, right? So if you have an appointment to get a vital organ like a heart, because everybody needs a heart to live, you know that somebody's being killed on demand.
Because normally you'd have to wait years potentially.
Right, exactly. Yes. Yeah, you have to wait years here. Sometimes you die waiting. And it's very interesting if you look at the numbers. There are 145 million people who have decided to donate their organs. They're on a list. That's a huge number, right? We only do about 45,000 transplants per year. China, it turns out, the research showed us in 2016, they're doing between 60 to 100,000 transplants per year. And yet the voluntary donation rate is basically next to nothing. It's 0.03%, which is just over 300,000 people. And yet they're doing all of these transplants. Where are they coming from, right? So this was the first large-scale study back in 2006. When our organization formed, and they looked at who is the organ source. And the government had always said we're doing about 10,000 transplants per year. They took that at face value, but they determined that it's mostly Falun Gong practitioners, but because they could see the numbers really jumped up after the start of the persecution. So in 2000, the number of transplant centers rose by 300%. You had about 50 before the persecution, and then there were, I'm not very good at math, but anyway, a lot more after that.
Of course, the persecution starting in '99, and then this major amount more of transplants within months of that beginning of that persecution, which of course is July 20th. So.
Yes, exactly. Right, right.
So actually your organization, Dr. Russo, coined the term forced organ harvesting.
Yes.
And I think, you know, Shen Yun, it displays a lot of beautiful dances about traditional Chinese culture, but it also has pieces that depict forced organ harvesting in China.
Right.
And for us who grew up in the free Western world, that seems inconceivable. It seems impossible that something like this could happen, that someone could think of doing something like this.
Yes, absolutely. But you know, in a communist country, any kind of totalitarian regime, you have people who are brainwashed, right? That's the idea behind these totalitarian regimes. They want to make sure that everybody's going to follow their agenda. So they use state media, that's what's happening in China, to create a certain narrative, and they've been doing this about Falun Gong since the start of the persecution. And so surgeons and nurses and anybody involved in transplant really believe that these people are subhuman. And this is actually a form of genocide, right? And one of the steps in genocide is dehumanization. So you make sure that the victim group is not seen as us, right? It's us versus them, as real humans. And so this is how people are able to do this. And unfortunately now, with this transnational repression that Li Shai mentioned, we're seeing this being covered by the New York Times, social media. They're carrying over this negative propaganda. So people are really turned off to this group.
And Dr. Russo, talk to us a little bit about this Falun Dafa Protection Act that Carrie mentioned earlier. Your organization helped to draft it.
Yes.
How critical would it be for this act to be passed?
We believe it's really critical. This is going to be the first U.S. bill that specifically addresses forced organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners. It's calling for reporting because we don't know exactly what's going on in China. We have a very good idea, but we need to get numbers, we need to get names, so that will allow us to have that. And then it's also requiring sanctions. So anybody who's known to be directly involved, they're going to have their visas revoked, all sorts of punishments for being involved in this massive crime. And then the most important thing is that the US will be protected from being complicit in China's transplantation, as long as the CCP is in power. Because what's been happening is we train Chinese physicians who will likely go back and do these murders because we know the donation rate is so little, and the execution rate is going down every year. We don't know what it is, it's the state secret, but that wouldn't account for 60 to 100,000 transplants because only about maybe 30%, 30 to 50% are viable of these organs because of hepatitis and AIDS and all sorts of infections.
Yeah, well, there's so much to unpack here, Dr. Russo and Li Shai, and we're gonna, if you'll stick around, we're gonna jump back in. But for now, I think what we're gonna do is leave the conversation here for now. And our special coverage of the 2025 rally to end the persecution of Falun Dafa, we've still got more to cover, including the parade, just after this short break.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
So there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. and we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
My name is Steve Lance, and I am the Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief for NTD News, and I also host the Capitol Report. NTD broadcasts via satellite into China, actually. If you have a satellite dish positioned in a certain way, you'll be able to receive the NTD broadcast. And you can imagine in a country where there is no freedom of the press, there's no freedom of speech, and all of the media is state-run, that poses a significant threat to the Chinese Communist Party. And so they have gone to great lengths to influence and subvert that effort. And I think we're on probably our 13th company, all because the CCP has went after every company who has provided that satellite to stop working with us. So the impact and the role that NTD and the Epoch Times has had, not just on China and the Chinese people, but to the rest of the world, has been incalculable. It's not just Chinese people that have been misled by the CCP, but here in the West, the CCP has infiltrated every level of our society, whether it be our universities through Confucius Institutes and CSSAs, Chinese Student and Scholar Associations, or Hollywood, or the media. The Epoch Times and NTD have been reporting and documenting and raising awareness about the CCP and allowing people in the West to understand what is taking place in the largest communist country in the world. Some of the founding journalists in China initially were arrested and sentenced for 10 years, and the extent of what happened to them may still be unknown. When you understand how this company was founded, who founded it, and why they did it, and what they sacrificed, it's really something special.
Welcome back to our live coverage of the 2025 rally and parade to end the persecution of Falun Dafa. The rally has ended. As we wait for the parade to start, we're going to bring back in our panel in studio. We've got Lishai Lemish, a Shen Yun MC, and Dr. Jessica Russo. She is a mental health advisor and board member for Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting. So let's jump right back in here. Right, Lishai, let's talk about what you mentioned earlier before the break about what the Chinese leader Xi Jinping said back in 2022, right? He reportedly called for this escalation in attacks against Falun Gong, against companies owned by Falun Gong practitioners overseas all around the globe. Specifically, as you mentioned there, with disinformation and lawfare.
So really what you're facing with here is it's been 26 years of persecution, right? 26 years this week. And Xi Jinping and the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party are saying, wait a minute, we're not crushing this group. We're not crushing them in China. We thought it would be 3 months and we would wipe it out. It's been 2.5 decades. Not only that, overseas, Falun Gong seems to be stronger and stronger. They have these rallies, they have these media entities, and they have Shen Yun Performing Arts. And Shen Yun goes to these top theaters around the world, including Lincoln Center, Kennedy Center here in the US, and is showing them what traditional Chinese culture was like before the Chinese Communist Party. Not only that, we're talking about the persecution of Falun Gong. We even talk about organ harvesting, like you mentioned before. So this is really, really terrifying to them. So Xi Jinping comes out 2022, according to sources, and we actually have sources from the Ministry of State Security that leaked out minutes from meetings that they had, 2 separate sources talking about this directive to really try to escalate the game, kind of an end game to crush Falun Gong and crush Shen Yun in the United States, where our headquarters are for Shen Yun, right? So they're saying all these things they did before are not working. Let's up the game, and let's do this through lawfare. Let's do this through media. Let's do this by activating sleeper agent cells in the community, people who are pretending to be Falun Gong practitioners who are actually not. And so what we see is there's some YouTubers, influencers in the Chinese sphere who were specifically named in these documents as assets of the Chinese Communist Party. We don't know how that came to be. We don't know if they were just people who were motivated on their own and then the CCP said, let's support them, because we know they said, let's support them, or if there's actually a more direct connection. But one of these YouTubers, actually long before the New York Times hit pieces came out, was talking about how he was going to get this story into the New York Times. So he was bringing a few people onto the show, former Shen Yun performers, who were disgruntled, did not have a good experience with the company. We have, over 1,000 performers who've come through the company. Most of them are happy. But yeah, performing at an elite performing arts company is maybe not for everybody. It's hard work, and there's a lot of dedication, and not everybody makes the cut. And also, it's a spiritual community, so there's regulations in terms of our spiritual practice that are protected by the Constitution. And so he got these people on his show, and then he connected them, according to his own posts on social media, to the New York Times. And now the New York Times does not mention any of this when they come out with their articles about Shen Yun. They do not mention that these performers, former performers, actually left Shen Yun on good terms in some cases, wanted to come back to the company. We have email records of them saying we want to come back to the company, and then only when they made a connection with the Beijing Dance Academy, which is a propaganda arm of the CCP. It's run by CCP members all the way. You can see this on their website in Chinese. You can't see it on their English website, but it's run by the CCP. It's a propaganda arm and our biggest international competitor. So after they went and made that connection with the Beijing Dance Academy, all of a sudden they have this turn and they're going after Shen Yun. And it's a handful of people, even if you accept what they're saying at face value. And then New York Times actually contacted some other former performers who had a really good experience with Shen Yun. Where was this in their stories? They talk about how performers are discouraged from getting medical treatment. I personally, on my podcast, Shen Yun Voices, interviewed two doctors, Dr. Damon Noto and Dr. Jingduan Yang, who talk about how they have treated performers. I've interviewed a dancer who had a surgery on his Achilles after he ruptured it. Injuries happen, not as much as you would think, but they do happen, and they get medical treatment. I've never seen somebody say, no, you can't get medical treatment. In fact, these doctors say that usually it's the management, the parents, the teachers, they're the first ones who bring these performers when they're hurt to get treatment. Again, where is this in the accusations, right? So they're depicting this world as a dark kind of work environment, even throwing terms out there like child labor when they're conflating terms. Like, for example, we have in our company a practicum program with a school that's affiliated, the Feitian Academy of the Arts and Feitian College, and they have a program that's accredited by the state of New York, by the Board of Education, where performers who are up to standard, they can actually perform with the company as students. So this is similar to how the NCAA used to be with sports, and you could compete. You can even sell tickets to those events, but athletes are not getting paid, but they are on full scholarship. That's, again, not something that was highlighted in the New York Times articles. These people are on full rides, full room and board, worth about $50,000 a year. They see the world while they're still at school. They graduate with no student debt. They have job placement right away if they're good. And why would they even be there if they didn't want to perform, right? This, again, is not what the New York Times is saying. They're trying to depict this. And what's scary to me is that what the New York Times produced is something that the Chinese Communist Party could not have dreamed of in their wildest dreams. Like the Ministry of Propaganda, which is like the Ministry of Truth from Orwell, right? They're all about, okay, spinning this story. What can we say about Shen Yun? How can we alienate American society? And that goes back to the rally and the people speaking at the rally, because what the CCP is really trying to do is to make American society, American government, turn against Shen Yun, turn against Falun Gong practitioners. People like myself who are Americans, who practice this spiritually and have a family and a career here, and make them look like they're enemies of not just the Chinese Communist Party, but American society. And that's really eerie, because you go back to 1999 when the persecution first started, and you had, according to Chinese government own estimates, which the New York Times covered, by the way, at the time, 70 to 100 million people practicing Falun Gong. And there were government officials, and there were media executives, and there were farmers and laborers, and all kinds of, the whole spectrum of society. And all of a sudden, they were made into enemies of the state. And these were people who did not have a background in political maneuvering or rebel rousing or going and having protests. And so they were caught off guard by all this. And now all of a sudden, they're being rounded up and thrown to prisons and labor camps. And we actually launched on our website, on shenyun.org, if you go to news, you can see this, a page detailing some of the stories of our own performers who experienced persecution themselves. For example, Ellie Rao, a principal dancer, one of our stars, when she was just a child, I think 4 years old, she was at her home when police barged in, took her father away, and she stood by the window watching him being driven away, disappearing, and he was killed 2 weeks later in detention. And we have so many stories like that. People who escaped from China on a motorcycle through Burma and then eventually got refugee status in Thailand. And people who lost family members, and more commonly, just people who cannot go see a dying parent for the last time. Everybody's blacklisted. Nobody can go back. And so grandparents in China who can't see their kids, can't see their grandkids because of this persecution. It's affected so many people, hundreds of millions of people, if you include the families in China, and so many people here in America.
You know, Lishai, the story of Shen Yun is so uniquely American, though it's been found by overseas Chinese, because here you have people coming from somewhere else and using the freedom of this country and the entrepreneurship that this country is known for, and really creating one of the most recognizable brands in the world. That beautiful billboard that comes out every fall, people in every city I travel to in America, they're like, oh yeah, I know Shen Yun. And I was really moved by Congressman Pat Ryan, Democrat from New York, who is the congressman for the Hudson Valley, where Shen Yun is based. And he was so emphatically in support of Shen Yun and Falun Dafa practitioners. But you know, some of this stuff with the CCP trying to attack people here in the U.S. and meddle in the U.S. affairs, I mean, it's stranger than fiction. You know, this one story about Lawfare where 2 Chinese spies pled guilty to trying to bribe an IRS agent to open up a bogus investigation into Shen Yun. I mean, can you talk about that? I mean, it's almost laughable if it wasn't true, and it's actually dead serious because this has happened.
Yeah, and that's fairly recent. That's just something that happened the last couple of years. So actually, it was an FBI sting operation, and kudos to the FBI for doing this and to people who worked on it. But basically, these were 2 Chinese PRC operatives, and they admitted to this, to working for the Chinese Communist Party, getting directives directly from China. And what they tried to do is how the FBI caught them in a sting operation pretending to be IRS officials. And they tried to bribe them to revoke Shen Yun's nonprofit status. But of course, I'm sure they've done many other things, and I think they're probably behind many of the other lawsuits that we've seen. And we've had, there have been other spies, Chinese spies in Long Island, for example, who were arrested, 6 of them. And one of the things they talked about is trying to drum up these lawsuits and just keep rolling them one after the other. So that's something that they've done. But I want to go back to your other point about how Shen Yun is an American success story, because this is not necessarily something that we set out to do from the beginning. I was with Shen Yun from day one in 2006, and the mission was, let's show traditional Chinese culture with the world. Not what the CCP is putting out there, but real traditional Chinese culture. At the same time, let's talk about the persecution of Falun Gong. But then it was so successful that we had a second company the next year, and then a third. And now we have 8 companies that tour around the world at the same time. So what you're seeing over the course of 18 years with Shen Yun is nothing short of the fastest growing performing arts company in American history. And you can imagine how the CCP is afraid of this, but we're not stopping it. I think the reason for its success is people come to the show, they're expecting to see Chinese culture. They're expecting to be entertained, and they certainly get all that. But what you're really seeing is China before communism, right? So this is the values and the virtues of ancient China, your loyalty and integrity and compassion, and faith, humility, right? Courage. And these are not just Chinese, right? These are universal values that we can all get behind. They're part of any traditional culture around the world. So when you perform, people say, oh, that's what Chinese culture is really about. It's not these cheap products from China. It's not COVID. It's not fentanyl. It's not this other stuff. It's really these values that we have in common. And by showing China before communism, people can imagine a China without communism. And that includes Chinese people as well who come to see the show and they say, wow, this is my real heritage. It's not just us non-Chinese saying this. It's Chinese people saying it too.
That, I mean, it's hard to believe that from overseas the challenges that Shen Yun faces. And I'd like to now go from what's happening in America over to what's happening in China, specifically with forced organ harvesting, Dr. Rousseau. I mean, the scale of this seems like it's not just happening in 1 or 2 cities. This seems like this is a national,
it's nationwide,
coordinated program.
Yes.
So can you elaborate on sort of the tactics of how this is taking place in China and how they're, in essence, marketing to people to come and get an organ that has not been donated willfully?
Well, you know, they used to advertise very explicitly until the research came out in 2006. And they took those pages down. So they would actually advertise how much each organ is, and they would boast about it, you know, come on over. Even in the research, actually, from 2006, undercover people from this research study would call these transplant centers and say, I understand that you have Falun Gong there. And they admitted it. So many of them admitted it very explicitly. So It was very open then. Now it's really kind of undercover, but it's kind of like an open secret. People still know, we hear from doctors. I have a patient who's going to China in 2 weeks. So people find ways, people talk on social media, and this is being done throughout the state. So many people are involved. And again, because people are brainwashed, in essence, to believe that this group is subhuman, they're willing to do it. And there's something that goes on in China, and I think this is true for many totalitarian states. They equate the government, the regime, with the country. So people think they're doing a good thing for the country. Well, okay, so these people, they're enemies of the state. I'm doing a good thing here. It's also safe for them. They get to be the us versus the them. So there's very interesting psychology behind all of this. And then that's how this ends up happening. And then there are people in the West who are really benefiting financially. And there's also, I think, a lot of fear among people, like we were saying earlier with politicians. This is true for anybody who's going to publicly speak out. The repercussions can be really extreme. People's reputations can be ruined. And so subtly that people don't even notice, oh, these are lies, this isn't true. They believe what they're reading on social media, what the newspapers tell them. So it's very scary. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that this could even be happening. You hear about the modern technology, the databasing of blood types,
yes.
to the Western technology needed to pull off something that is like, what you'd expect out of some kind of, sci-fi movie. It's just hard to believe. And this discussion is really thought-provoking. We are waiting for the live parade to start. And while we're waiting for that, we're going to continue with the discussion. Fiona, I know you have a bunch of questions probably that you want to get to.
Well, yeah, thank you, Carrie. Dr. Russo, I want to talk a bit more about this movie that came out, State Organs.
Yes.
Now, that reached quite an audience here.
Yes.
Talk to us about audience reactions, specifically, people who grew up in the West. And as I mentioned earlier, never even knew this was a thing.
Right. They can't believe it. There was actually a documentary made several years ago called Hard to Believe. Because in a democratic country, we just can't believe that people would act like this. And they would be so taken in. But the power of media, as you know, is very strong. And this is primarily what the government is doing. So State Organs is actually a fairly new documentary. And it traces the journey of two families who are looking for their loved ones who have likely disappeared because of forced organ harvesting. And so it traces the experience that they're having, the struggles, the hope, and it's so touching. I've seen this movie maybe 7 or 8 times. I'm on a panel each time I see it, and I cry each time. It's so touching. And when it's finished, people are just so moved, and they just want to do whatever they can to stop this, because they really are shocked. And they think, okay, this is so horrible. This has to end, and I want to be a part of it, which is really great. It's very encouraging.
It is really encouraging to see that. And as Carrie mentioned earlier, we are still waiting on the 2025 parade to end the persecution of Falun Dafa. What you're seeing there is a live shot of the Capitol. We could see actually in the distance there, the parade has begun. It is slowly marching towards our camera position. So in just a moment, we will be getting to that live coverage. Really quickly here, Alicia, while we're waiting for the parade to come here, we're seeing a live shot of the Capitol. These practitioners, they're marching to the backdrop of this Capitol. It's a representation of freedom. How important are American values to this demonstration we're seeing here today?
Well, I think this is such an important message because, in a way, and it's easy to be cynical about American values in the 21st century, right? Some people are all about being very proud of that and celebrating that, and other people say, well, it's not what it used to be, but really, in a way, globally, America is still a symbol of freedom. And people in China, they talk about what is happening in America. And if people in America stop supporting freedom, that gets on the news in China as well. The riots, everything that we're experiencing here in America, that is headline news in China. But actually, we know that in the kind of underground, in the little towns throughout China, people are distributing flyers talking about there was a congressional resolution in America supporting Falun Gong. There was a congressman who said this, or there's a city who passed a resolution, or there's a Chinese official who was maybe prohibited from entering the country because of his involvement in persecution. That's big news in China. And when there are officials in China who get in trouble in America for their persecution, for their atrocities, crimes against humanity in China, that sends shockwaves throughout China. People are afraid because a lot of people in China think the CCP is a sinking ship. That's why there's so much money buying real estate in America, trying to get the money out of China, trying to get students to get passports in other countries. If they hear they can't come to America, it'll make them think twice about their involvement in a campaign that they don't even believe in, that's been forced upon them too. And so everything we do here has tremendous impact on China.
Well, Lishai Lemish with Shen Yun Performing Arts and Dr. Russo with Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting. Such an interesting and important conversation. We'd like to ask you to stick around so that we can continue the conversation. But right now we see the parade starting to come down. I believe this is Pennsylvania Avenue. So we're going to tune in as we see the very beginning of the parade coming right now. And it's in view. Let's go live now to that. And as you can see, the police are escorting the very beginning of the parade. It's just the tip of the spear. That's several thousand people. They've traveled certainly from all over America and probably many other countries as well, because they are looking to raise awareness about the persecution of Falun Dafa, commemorating 26 years since the Chinese Communist Party started what has now been classified as a genocide of people based on their faith for practicing what is essentially Qigong exercises and believing in the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. It's hard to believe, but here they come.
And that's right. It seems like they're coming over soon. They haven't quite reached our camera just yet. So actually, we're going to bring it back in studio for just a second. Lishai, Dr. Russo, I'm glad you guys haven't left yet. Lishai, as Carrie mentioned there, it's 26 years of persecution. You actually had a very unique experience in that way back in 2001, that's what, 2 years after the persecution began, you had a chance to travel to China and demonstrate at Tiananmen Square. I believe we have a photo of that if we're able to pull it up. And so it'll come up in just a second, but as we're waiting for that, Lishai, so tell us, there we go. There's the photo. We see our yellow
nice
circle around you and a blue shirt. So Lishai, that's an incredible story. Tell us more about what that was like.
So that was really early on in the persecution. I don't think we would have thought it was going to go this long, but we were getting reports daily about people being tortured and killed in detention. And these reports, the ones that could get out of China through the media blockade, through the internet firewall, they would have all these details about what happened to this person, how they were arrested, how they were tortured, how they died. And the numbers just climbing from the hundreds and into the thousands. We didn't even know about organ harvesting yet, although it was probably happening already at this time. And so very organically, a few of us had this idea. Actually, my idea came, I was in college, and there was somebody there talking about study abroad in China. I said, well, I'm probably not going to be able to study there with the persecution, but maybe I should go to China. Maybe just handing out flyers and getting petition signatures on my campus in California isn't all that I could do. What if I went to China and told the practitioners in China, you're not alone. We understand what's happening. We support you. We're fighting for you as hard as we can. And tell the Chinese Communist Party, we know what you're doing. The world is watching. Let's bring attention to what you're doing and let the world know. And I talked to a friend of mine, a guy in San Francisco, and he said, you know what, that's interesting. I know some guys in Sweden, and they know somebody in Germany. Before we knew it, we had 35 people from 12 countries around the world. And we just very simply bought our tickets, got hotels separately, and we said, 2 p.m., November 20th, 2001, we'll meet in front of the flagpole on Tiananmen Square. And I met most of these people for the first time there. And then we just crossed our legs in meditation. We opened this banner, very simply said truth, compassion, tolerance, the principles of Falun Dafa. And within 30 seconds, we were surrounded by police, thrown into police vans, beaten up, sent into detention, beaten up again. There were literally blood stains on the wall. I was in an interrogation room. They had a good cop, bad cop, the whole light, people slamming doors, the whole thing got beaten up there. And then eventually, because fortunately for us, we have white faces and we don't have Chinese citizenships. Our embassies, thank you very much, were calling for us and trying to get us out. We were put on a plane. I was barefoot, had a dislocated jaw. My friend next to me had 2 broken ribs, broken fingers, and a broken nose. And they handed us the China Daily newspaper, which is the English mouthpiece of the Chinese Communist Party. And it said there, a group of 35 people from overseas came to China supported by anti-China forces like the CIA. They were treated well, put up in a hotel, fed, and sent back to their countries. And I'm looking around, and all these people around me are injured and you know, like bloody faces. And I'm saying, wow, it's really, really easy to lie to people when you control the media. And that was my first lesson in the CCP's propaganda, and got just a tiny smidgen. I mean, what I experienced there is probably not something that these people at the rally who've actually lived through persecution would even bother remembering, because it was all the time and it was much, much worse. But I saw firsthand, and one thing I won't forget is the look in the eyes of the Chinese policeman who was beating me up. And the look was, if you were not Chinese, I could kill you right now, and I hate that I can't do that.
Wow, so powerful. Yet to think that they would dislocate your jaw with your citizenship. Yeah, to think of what happens to really the millions of people that are right now in a Chinese prison camp. It's hard to think about.
Well, it was very symbolic, I think, because we went there to speak out for the people who have no voice. And the first thing they did was make me unable to speak for a couple of days by knocking my jaw out of place. And that's really what this is all about, is getting the voice, getting the stories out. That's what we do with Shen Yun. That's what this parade is doing. Giving voice to those people in China who are languishing in some prison, have no voice, or are maybe on the organ harvesting table, giving them a voice, letting the world know what's happening.
Absolutely. And on that note, Lishai, very fitting note to end off on, because we're going to go now to our live look at the parade. It has finally reached our camera position right outside the Capitol. What we're seeing now is the Tianguo marching band, Carrie.
That's right.
Now, Tianguo, it stands for celestial. So a lot of what we're going to see today is a reflection of these Falun Dafa practitioners and the emphasis they place on traditional Chinese culture. As Lishai mentioned there, it's all a similar theme with Shen Yun as well. All of these are volunteer performers from all walks of life. Some of them professional musicians, other of them just picked up an instrument and started to learn on their own because they wanted to join the band.
That's right. You know, they get together. They, as you mentioned, they're from many cities. They have very creative ways of practicing, and they wish to share the beauty and the peacefulness of Falun Dafa through music.
And all original compositions as well, Carrie.
That's right. And when people go to a Falun Dafa parade, if they are in DC or if it comes through in New York City, this music is something that sort of lingers with them. And that's some of the comments that I've heard, that it's very moving and it's very peaceful. Even though there's so many thousands of people and it's over 90 degrees and it's the swamp of DC, you can't not be somewhat moved and relaxed by this band.
That's right. And so let's give our audience a chance to hear that music. Let's tune in for a second.
No, the high ones, all the banners, that's going to be nice. Okay. The one floating. I follow you, yeah. You want to go? We just wait for them. Okay. And then we... I don't want to be cow. Oh, the big, very big. That showed me.
And we're seeing there a live look of the 2025 parade to end the persecution of Falun Dafa, which is happening in the heart of our nation's capital.
That's right. And what we have here is a flag team with the message that Falun Dafa is good. In Chinese, Falun Dafa Hao.
Very good Chinese, Gary.
Thank you. Falun Dafa Hao. And really, it's such a simple message, but it seeks to counterbalance a narrative from the Chinese Communist Party that for 26 years has been brutally persecuting these people, their family members, and millions more in China who have no voice. And so by carrying the banner Falun Dafa is good and wearing it on their shirt, it sends a message that this persecution is unfounded.
Yes.
It has no basis.
And the word Hao in Chinese actually has more than just the meaning of good. It can also mean words such as great, grand, magnificent. So when these practitioners of Falun Dafa carry these banners, repeat those words, Falun Dafa Hao, they're really conveying their appreciation for this practice and all the benefits it's brought to their lives.
That's right. And it's quite simple. You saw the banners just there: truthfulness, compassion, tolerance. Zhen, Shan, Ren. Very simple in terms, but actually very, very rich and deep. And these practitioners have benefited from when dealing with adversity, instead of lashing out, they say, where do I fall short in terms of truthfulness, compassion, tolerance? What can I have done differently to have changed that situation? And so each of these people are really trying to live by those three very simple principles.
And it applies really to all situations in life, you know. It's not some grand, lofty thing. It's very down to earth that every single person can relate to.
That's right, that's right. And what we see here is the banner, Dafa is the wisdom of the Creator, and that's the first line of Zhuan Falun, the book of Falun Dafa.
That's right, Zhuan Falun, the main teachings are all in that book. And it's actually free online in, I believe, over 50 different languages, because people in over 100 different countries speaking over 50 different languages all practice Falun Dafa.
That's right, 100 plus countries. There,
Yes.
we see it on screen. So Fiona, what do we see here?
Well, this is another flag team, Carrie. A lot of words there that we just saw, once again saying Falun Dafa. Falun Dafa is good. The three principles of the practice: truthfulness, compassion, tolerance. And those flags and a lot of these banners, you see a lot of beautiful, vivid, harmonious colors. That's something that I think stands out to a lot of bystanders who I've spoken to, who have seen these parades. They say it's such a pop of color in the city. And there we go, once again, seeing those flags. And Carrie, once again, another theme that we see throughout these parades is traditional Chinese culture, because those flags, they're something that you would see in ancient China. They were used on battlefields.
Yeah, we heard Li Shai talk about how Shen Yun seeks to promote China before communism and the richness, really, of the Chinese culture, and how the Communist Party has really been quite antithetical to the 5,000 years of China's rich heritage of spirituality and really trying to live positively.
That's right. And we're seeing there, once again, the backdrop of the Capitol with the parade in front. Very symbolic, especially considering what we were just discussing in that panel.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is the symbol to the entire world of freedom and democracy. Something that when the Berlin Wall came down in 1989 and it looked like communism would fall globally, of course what happened in Tiananmen Square went in the other direction. And the Falun Gong persecution started just 10 years later and has been going on for 26 years. Crimes against humanity, but the way that they protest is through beauty and nonviolence.
Absolutely. That's another thing you'll notice in every single one of these events. There's an overarching sense of peace. They're not angry. They just want to get their message out and have the right to freedom of belief.
One wonders why they feel so strongly to it's at least 93 degrees, it's humid, and they're wearing long pants and gloves. And I think it speaks to the benefits and the popularity of Falun Dafa. People who try the exercises tend to report feeling very invigorated, but not in a cardiovascular style way. It's a very slow-moving style of exercise that really invigorates the whole body. People report significant improvements to not just their physical body, but also their mental health. And that's why so many thousands of people have come to show their support and to ask the US government and the US people to support the ending of the persecution of Falun Gong inside China.
That's right, and we're seeing there the procession slowly moving by our camera. Lots of blues and yellows, Carrie. Those are two of the main colors associated with Falun Dafa.
What always strikes me is the dignity and the solemnness of the affair.
Yes. Look at those organized rows.
Yeah.
I wonder how long it took to practice getting those rows perfectly straight.
That's right. That's right.
And for anyone just tuning in right now, we are covering live the 2025 parade to end the persecution of Falun Dafa, a persecution that began, as we see on that banner there, 26 years ago. We're seeing the banner there that the practitioners are holding saying, "Stop persecution of Falun Gong in China." That's really the theme of today's parade and the rally that came before.
Yeah, as we move into this second section of the parade, we're seeing now, this is a very moving part of the parade. We've moved from the Falun Dafa is good section where people had the banners showing truthfulness, compassion, tolerance, but now these people approaching, they're actually holding the portraits of people who have lost their lives inside of China.
That's right. At the front there, we see a big circular sign with the Chinese character for "in memory of." So every single photo that you see there being carried by one of those practitioners wearing full white is someone who has been killed during this 26-year persecution inside of China.
Yeah, the official number is only one that could be fully vetted and accounted for. To get truthful information and data out of China is nearly impossible, and we know the death toll significantly higher, but yet these are verified cases of people losing their life in a Chinese concentration camp.
That's right, and right behind the circular sign, you'll see a white banner, partially covered, but that's the Chinese character saying, "Persecuted to death for believing in truthfulness, compassion, forbearance." And can you imagine that?
Yeah, it is hard to believe that truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance would be something not encouraged by any society, but to the West, it's just so foreign that a society could exist where there's no transparency, there's no elections, there's no representation. And in such a society, something that really we were warned about through all these dystopian novels written 2 generations ago, like 1984, it has come to pass inside of China.
And we're seeing some banners there. This segment is called the Stop the Persecution segment. So the main theme of these banners held up there is, as I said, to raise awareness and try to get this persecution to finally end. And here we're seeing the front of the parade once again. Once again, it is Tianguo Marching Band leading the parade. And moving back towards the Stop the Persecution section of the parade. Carrie, actually, those practitioners holding the wreaths, they're dressed all in white because actually white is the color of mourning in traditional Chinese culture. More banners in the signature blue and yellow of Falun Dafa.
And you can see that first banner, "Thank you, House of Representatives." And what they're thanking the House of Representatives for is for advancing the Falun Gong Protection Act, which is now going to the Senate. Should it clear the Senate, it will go to President Trump's desk, and it puts major accountability on those involved in forced organ harvesting of live humans, which is just astonishing. And so it acts not just as a proclamation, but an actual deterrent to all of those participating in China in this genocide.
That's right. Beautiful banners there. A lot of them, once again, that's that phrase over and over again. Falun Dafa hao. Falun Dafa is good. A lot of them saying there that white one helps stop persecution of Falun Gong in China.
And what it looks like those banners are catching a breeze, and that's great for those
must feel great out there.
hardworking banner carriers, because it is warm, but they don't seem bothered by it. They all seem very serene.
That's right.
Getting a very lovely, thankfully, breeze to cool them down as they march.
And you know, the commemoration date for the persecution every year is July 20th, because that's the day it officially started back in 1999. And I'll come back to that in just a second, but if you look on the screen there, we got a tiny little parade participant.
Yes, we do.
Look at that little man.
Yeah,
this is what you see
colors,
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see kids with their parents. You know, parents bring their kids out because they want to make sure their kids know how important it is to speak out against this type of injustice and to stand up for their belief.
Yeah, when you don't have freedom and you come and gain freedom, that voice becomes so much more valuable, and that right to march peacefully becomes so much more appreciated when you don't have it in China.
That's right. And it's very touching. I've covered a few of these parades. You know, you see parents pushing their kids in strollers or, you know, carrying them, and they don't mind how tiring it gets, how hot it gets, because they think it's worth it. There we go.
And that was just the banner for an NGO, to the World Organization to Investigate the Persecution of Falun Gong. There are many different organizations that have been stood up to try to get data out of China showing what's actually happening. I mean, that first-hand account that Jack Bradley brought us, the woman spoke of unthinkable things that happened to her, yet she put that aside because she wanted to get her story out, not for herself, but to let people know what was happening. She described.
Yep. And as we're seeing on the screen there, in relation to what you're talking about, Carrie, once again, another banner calling for stopping the forced organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners. Stop persecution of Falun Gong in China once again. If y'all entertain my Chinese there, it says 停止迫害法轮功.
We will always entertain your very well pronounced Chinese. We thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
And as Dr. Jessica Russo was sharing with us some of the evidence that her organization has found about the crime of organ harvesting, where she said in the early days of this, they were even marketing internationally that you could go to China and listed the prices and how to go and arrange an organ transplant in less than 3 weeks, which to her as a doctor, she said, is just preposterous, because the wait list in America with the most advanced healthcare system is years to get a kidney or a liver.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrific. And that's why we see every single year these practitioners coming out, holding these rallies, holding these parades with these big banners, trying to get the word out there. As I was saying earlier, Carrie, because these parades always happen around the commemoration date of July 20th, it always happens in the sweltering heat of DC. But they don't mind. You know, they believe that what they're doing is very important and no type of weather is going to stop them.
You know, I think one thing that is hard to believe as an American or in the westernized world is this concept that originated, I think the Nazis were known for it, as was Stalin with the Gestapo, but they actually have a version of that just for the purpose of dealing with Falun Gong called the 610 Office. This was established by Jiang Zemin completely outside of any legal purview, a secret police force for rounding up people for their faith and putting them in labor camps where they would receive torture unless they signed a contract stating that they would not only renounce their faith, but turn in all of their friends and family who practice. I mean, it's just hard to believe that something on such a grand scale could be happening in the largest country in the world.
That's right, and we're seeing a banner there saying dismantle the CCP, end the persecution. Once again, the main theme of what is the 2025 rally and parade to end the persecution of Falun Dafa. We also saw, as you see there on that banner, attack on human dignity, kidneys, livers, corneas. That was, as Dr. Russo was mentioning, just these body parts that are being harvested out of healthy, live, unconsenting people to make money for the government, the Chinese government.
What is very encouraging about the parade and the rally was the support that we saw from really so many different levels of not just government, but all of these righteous voices coming out in support of these people who many of their family members are at risk today. It's hard, it's just hard to believe it. And it's beautiful that they're, in light of how busy people are, that people do want to do something and they want to lend their support.
Absolutely. And we're seeing there once again the Wreath team holding photos of Falun Dafa practitioners who have unfortunately been killed in the persecution in China. And to another section now of the parade, a big banner saying the world needs truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. Many smaller placards there saying Falun Dafa is great.
Yeah, you mentioned that how isn't good, it's not quite great. What is the deeper meaning of that word, how?
Well, yeah, Carrie, you know, it's interesting. A lot of characters in Chinese, they can have multiple different meanings. So a word like how, it can mean good, and in a lot of contexts it does mean good. And here you could say it means good, but it could also mean deeper things, such as I mentioned, magnificent, grand, wonderful. So when these practitioners say Falun Dafa hao, sometimes they mean something deeper.
I see that. I see there's a certain kind of nobility that they, you know,
the simplicity of it.
Yeah, there is a quiet confidence that all of these marching seem to have. They're calm. Their posture's great, and they seem very proud about what they've. You know, many of these people have had to take a day off work in the middle of the work week.
Yep.
And they seem very proud to be participating.
And what we're seeing there on those boards, they're holding communism's ultimate goal, destroy the human race, and also sentences such as humanity's only hope is to return to morality. And those are in reference to a lot of the goals of communism.
Yeah, there's such a juxtaposition. We have such difficult topic, and then you have the symbol of freedom behind them. And I couldn't help but smile. There was a baby being held, holding. The mom was helping with the banner and lovingly holding a baby to her body as she walked down the parade. Yeah, it really is quite a juxtaposition.
And you know, this is something that has happened across generations. You know, I remember last time during the Falun Dafa Day Parade, we had Cynthia Sun in from the Falun Dafa Information Center. She was born the same month, same year the persecution started. She's done with grad school now. There we see again another banner saying humanity's only hope is to improve morality. This relates, a lot to what Li Shai said about, the Chinese Communist Party. It did all it could to try and destroy traditional Chinese culture, which included a lot of deeply entrenched themes of morality, spirituality. And now these Falun Dafa practitioners, they're saying that's not what Chinese culture is. This is what Chinese culture really is.
That's right. The systematic attempt to completely destroy the rich culture, 5,000-year culture, nearly accomplished by the Chinese Communist Party, but through Falun Dafa and Shen Yun and other folks that value these universal principles, it seems that things have reached the extreme, and now they're coming back around. This idea of morality is great. Truthfulness, compassion, tolerance, nothing bad can come of that, only good.
Oh, and there we see a star of the parade.
Yeah, there she is.
Absolutely adorable. You see some strollers in the back too. I saw almost like there we go.
I think we've hit the family section of the parade, perhaps.
But it's very touching to see that. To see these mothers out with their kids. Once again, humanity's only hope is to improve morality.
Yeah, it kind of does go back to the golden rule, right? It's just age-old wisdom. You would treat others the way you want to be treated. You would try to leave things better than you find them. Just basic things that parents try to bestow to their children is not taught in communist China. It's actually infighting, and it's backdoor struggle, and so antithetical to what this parade is about.
And Carrie, I think that brings up a really good point. Despite Falun Dafa originating in China, the values that it spreads, they're really universal. Anyone in the world could resonate with these types of values. And there we go. You see, Falun Dafa is great. And let me tell you, Carrie, those banners, I don't think they're too easy to walk with, especially when you got the wind blowing at it. It's almost like a sail on a ship.
That's right. And now you hear another bit of Falun Dafa music. This very, very peaceful, introspective composition.
Yes. And they'll have, during these parades, they'll have people placed along the parades holding these big speakers playing this music.
Well, you could see they had a headwind, and they were holding with both hands and leaning in.
I know. It must be quite a workout.
Once again, we're watching the rally and now the parade to end the persecution of Falun Dafa in Washington, D.C.
26 years of persecution in mainland China, Carrie.
That's right. July 20th commemorates that day.
Persecution started on July 20th of 1999. We're now in July of 2025. We're seeing there those banners in both Chinese and English calling for an end to this persecution. That's really the main theme of today's parade and rally.
And I think the thing that's hard to understand if you're from the West is if the world knows this persecution is happening, why don't they just stop? And I think it's one of these things that if there's no discourse in society, you can't just wave your hand and say, "Oh, we were wrong about that." You know, there's no elections, there's no method by which you can reverse course.
That's right.
And so they are just dug into this unconscionable position of somebody who led the country 20 years ago and is not even alive anymore. Of course, the regime leader Jiang Zemin, who initiated this persecution against Falun Gong.
That's right. A banner there saying communism's ultimate goal to destroy the human race. Those are some of the main themes from actually a book published by our sister media, the Epoch Times, right? The 9 commentaries on communism, I believe it's called, on the Communist Party.
That's right. That's right. And what you really have is a society led by those who do not want any form of spirituality or something higher than materialism. An atheist country, really, is what the Chinese Communist Party is. They say embrace atheism. So if you look at all of the groups that have been marginalized and subject to violence, it's always something traditional or something spiritual. Of course, the Tibetans,
That's right.
the Uyghurs in the West, the house church Christians, those who seek democracy. We hear of pressure against the Mongolian culture in the North. Anything traditional, anything spiritual is antithetical to the atheist position of the Chinese Communist Party.
And that's kind of like what Li Shai mentioned earlier. You know, this persecution, it started with Falun Gong, but if the CCP continues, it won't just stop at Falun Gong.
That's right. Yet collateral damage is not of concern when they slash a bus's tires with the intention of it exploding on the highway, as Li Shai mentioned. It endangers everybody on the highway. It's like a cancer.
So we're seeing there once again the words Falun Gong, which is another name for Falun Dafa, and the principles of Falun Dafa: truthfulness, compassion, forbearance.
Fiona, maybe you can shed some light on the exercises of Falun Dafa.
Yeah, well, I'd love to, Carrie. So there are 5 exercises in the practice of Falun Dafa. They're slow moving. 4 of them are standing exercises. 1 is a sitting meditation. A lot of people who do the exercises say that afterwards they feel physically energized, but mentally at peace as well.
And those 5 exercises were taught by the creator of Falun Dafa, Mr. Li Hongzhi. He toured in China in the 90s teaching for 2.5 years, and it went from nobody practicing to almost 10% of the entire country of China practicing, all through word of mouth. And he wanted it to be free. The only 2 requirements were you cannot alter it the way that I've taught it, and you can never charge money for it. And so anybody around the world in almost any language can go to falundafa.org and they can watch videos on how to perform these exercises.
That's right, and all teachings are free to read as well in, what did we say, around 50 different languages, Carrie? Very accessible, all online, all free of charge. We're just hearing there a very peaceful music. Carrie, I really like how they're all wearing yellow, and a lot of them are wearing yellow hats as well. I think it gives a very nice sense of unity.
Absolutely.
Really stands out against the gray pavement as well.
Now, this golden color, is there any significance in Chinese culture to the yellow golden color?
Yeah, well, you know, this was a color associated with the divine, with the heavens. Interestingly, emperors in ancient China would wear this type of golden yellow because it was believed that their rule over the country was bestowed upon them by heaven, and so they wore the golden yellow color as a representation of their connection to the divine. And nowadays, you know, yellow is just such a bright, cheerful color, even in Western culture. You know, the sun is yellow, lemonade, one of my favorite summer drinks, is yellow.
I think we should be serving some lemonade to these hardworking protesters, or I would call
Demonstrators,
them demonstrators, yeah. Protesting the Chinese Communist Party, but doing so in such a solemn and non-violent way, getting their message out. Year after year, this parade happens in the nation's
26
capital.
years and never a violent protest.
That's right.
There we go, another banner, Stop the Persecution of Falun Gong in China.
You know, one of the very first demonstrations inside of China, several thousand people showed up, and it really spooked the communist leader. But they all stood quietly and solemnly, and some of the eyewitness accounts say they removed all of the garbage and scrap paper and they left the streets
Cleaner than they found them.
spotless, yes.
Yeah. And I think that goes to show the type of teachings that Falun Dafa imparts on people.
I was really moved by the Congressman Pat Ryan, and he looked out at the rally and he said, if you have a problem, come to my office. That's what we're here for. And it was, and you know that he meant it, and he has worked on the cases of many persecuted Falun Gong practitioners, his office has, and he's supported Shen Yun's headquarters, which is in his district in the Hudson Valley.
Well, you know, I think that's also part of today's parade. It's really also a demonstration of what makes America so special. We also saw earlier a banner that I believe the words Falun Dafa, but they were made using the stars and stripes. I believe it is these demonstrators' way of showing their appreciation for America and the freedom here.
It does feel like the climate is shifting, you know, because for 30 years, especially after China joined the World World Trade Organization, despite their terrible human rights record, they still were admitted, and for decades there was sort of lip service to human rights, but trade was always put first. And it seems like we're kind of entering maybe a new chapter where things are. Where that is coming to the forefront. President Trump, the first to meet with not just Falun Gong practitioners, but other dissidents from China, and he hosted them at the White House, and he's basically said that we're not going to look the other way. We're not going to try to nation build, but we're going to have honest conversations in the open. We're not going to do these conversations behind closed doors, and I know that meant a lot, that the president met with, for the first time, a victim of torture inside of Chinese labor camp.
Yeah. And if you're just tuning in right now, this is NTD's special live coverage of the 2025 parade and rally to end the persecution of Falun Dafa. It's happening in the heart of the Capitol in Washington, D.C., with the Capitol as the backdrop.
And we just saw that column that said that there were 100 million people practicing inside China. And
Yes.
well, where does that number actually come from? It was a census that was done by the government in 1996. And one of the questions on the census was, do you practice Falun Gong? 100 million people in a country of about 1.5 billion said that they do.
And you know, the funny thing is, at the beginning, Falun Dafa was introduced to the public in 1992. The Chinese government was very supportive of it because this practice made people peaceful, healthy, happy, kinder.
Wanting to contribute to society.
That's right.
Yeah.
I believe there were areas where, as the number of Falun Gong practitioners went up, crime rates actually went down.
Yeah, what a great influence in society. And they estimated that there were billions of dollars in healthcare costs saved because the practice makes one healthy.
That's right. And that banner that we saw earlier there, Carrie, thank you, U.S. House of Reps, for passing Falun Gong Protection Act. A very important and critical act, as we heard from Dr. Russo earlier.
That's right. That act will actually hold those accountable. They will lose any privileges to come to the United States if they have been named as being complicit in persecuting Falun Gong or in the forced organ harvesting.
And also importantly, it prevents the U.S. from becoming complicit in this organ trade.
That's right. Israel, one of the few countries in the world to actually ban organ tourism in China.
And once again, a banner there saying Falun Gong practitioners killed for their organs. It's really horrific, some of these stories you hear. And the story of Chen Pei-ming, that individual who came out of China who miraculously survived having parts of, I believe it was his lung and liver harvested, still has the scars to prove it.
And of course, Jack Bradley, our NTD reporter, interviewing somebody who said that she was handcuffed outside in the winter and beaten.
Unconscious by several people simultaneously.
And you saw her, she was
A slight woman.
Yeah, a woman of relatively small stature, didn't look like a threat to anybody. To do that to anybody, but you know, a gentle woman it boggles the mind. It really does.
And many of these banners are in white because that is the customary mourning color in traditional Chinese culture. So today's parade really a sense of grieving, of course, for those who have been killed, but still underlying all of that, a sense of strength and hope, a belief that this will end someday and that there will be justice.
Yeah, that strength of character and resilience and not responding fire with fire.
Right.
Always taking the high road and using words and using banners and speaking with representatives and always looking to clarify the facts where the Communist Party attempts to hide that this is happening. And as we said earlier, they're dug in so deep, they can't just raise up their hand and say, oh, we were wrong, Falun Gong is great. And that is the stalemate that has been happening now for 26 years.
Some banners there are mentioning transnational repression. Carrie, that's a term that's been coming up more often than not over the past couple years.
That's right, and I think this speaks to the unrestricted warfare, not just against Falun Gong, but against America in totality, using trade, using spies, using students. They were smuggling in, different types of agricultural potential weaponry into the country. And it's a full-scale, unconventional war, not using tanks and guns, but using spies and subversion. And those principles honed against overseas Chinese, particularly overseas Falun Gong.
Yes. Banner after banner calling for the end of this persecution. In 26 years of persecution, that's 26 years too long.
That's right. And as you said earlier, here we see families together holding a banner.
Earlier we were talking about how families were literally ripped apart because they were practicing Falun Gong inside of China. So it's very meaningful to these practitioners to be able to be together as families here in the U.S. and spreading this message that they've got.
Yeah, one story that I know of that is quite moving is a woman who was a professor at the Peking University, essentially China's Harvard or Oxford, and a professor there, and she had a small child and a wonderful husband, and 2 of her family members were tortured to death. And her family said, you have to give up everything and leave because you will be next. And she had to give up this wonderful life that she had in China and start over with nothing.
Absolutely devastating.
And I know if you ask her, she's grateful because she's been welcomed in this country. And she says she came here for freedom. And I know she's marching in this parade right now. And I know that that Capitol building, that represents freedom to people all around the world, but especially for those who've been enduring such hardships in China.
And there we see a happier banner, if you will, celebrating 33 years since Falun Dafa was first introduced to the public.
That's right.
And now we're coming up here, Carrie, on the Tuidang section of the parade. Tell us a little bit more about this quitting the Communist Party movement.
Oh, I think you had mentioned the Epoch Times series, the 9 commentaries on the Chinese Communist Party, and this was a groundbreaking series because China controls the media and the education curriculum. There was never a real thorough analysis of the legacy of the Chinese Communist Party, and our sister media, the Epoch Times, sought to do that, and it created such a groundswell that they set up a spot where people could actually renounce their affiliation with the Chinese Communist Party, and literally hundreds of millions of people, many through pseudonyms so as not to potentially endanger their family, but they seek to remove the stain upon themselves and their family of being associated with the Chinese Communist Party because of its murder of millions and millions of Chinese people.
And I believe the number now is nearly 450 million people, Carrie, who have used a secure platform through the Tuidang Center to say that they are cutting ties with the Chinese Communist Party.
And the word Tuidang, what does that mean, Fiona?
Well, that is verbatim, it means quitting the party.
Quitting the party.
Quitting the party.
All in one word. There's a word for it.
Yes,
they have
exactly.
a word for it in Chinese. Great.
Very efficient.
Yeah, Tuidang, quitting the party.
And if you're just tuning in right now, we are covering the 2025 parade to end the persecution of Falun Dafa. We're seeing the parade go down one of the central roads, one of the main roads in Washington, D.C., with the Capitol right there in the back. A lot of these banners really summarize the themes of today's parade, of the Falun Dafa practice in general.
Yeah, this quit the party section of the parade, I think it really looks to the future, and I think that's why it's the end of the parade. You know, the beginning is Falun Dafa is good, truthfulness, compassion, tolerance is good. The middle mourns the loss of fellow practitioners, showing their faces, holding wreaths to remember them. And now at the end of the parade, this is what the future of China will look like. As people become aware of its many crimes, they're looking forward to a future where there's freedom in China.
You know, 26 long years, but these Falun Dafa practitioners have never given up hope.
That is the Ren, isn't it, of the Jen, Shan, Ren. What could you explain the Ren? Because I think that Jen is a little bit more specific.
That's right,
and Shan is a little bit more
compassion.
specific. But Ren actually, I think, is really, I mean, you're seeing it. Look at how warm they are. They're holding that banner. They have that Ren. And what is that? What are some of the different English terms for Ren?
Yeah, I mean, you know, some people translate it as tolerance. Some people translate it as forbearance. It's something that shows up in everyday life, in every minute hardship or conflict or bump in the road that you come across. How do you go about handling that, you know? How do you overcome that hardship?
That's
How do
right.
you take it with a smile?
Yeah, I think in the West, you know, this idea that you can make something out of nothing, it's sort of like this grit. But grit almost has this like hustle to it, where this is more of like
It's extremely peaceful.
Like a bearing, right? Like
Yes.
a strength in your position.
Yes, an inner strength. And so we're seeing there once again the section for the quitting the Chinese Communist Party section. A very significant movement, both inside and outside China.
That's right. You see that almost 500 million people now have renounced any and all affiliation. And what's really interesting is many current party members, many of them in particular, have quit the party, even though they remain a member of it, because that's what that society is like. They can't just raise their hand, stand in Tiananmen the way Li Shai had described his experience, and say, I'm quitting the party. So they have to do it in a very sort of secret way, but in their heart, they know sort of what the future of China holds.
You know, Carrie, it's always so interesting to watch these parades. You see all these people, and you could tell they're from all different walks of life. They're from all different parts of the country or different parts of the world even for some. But, you know, they're all united in this one mission. And we continue our live coverage of the 2025 parade to end the persecution of Falun Dafa. As the parade slowly nears its end, we're actually going to come back into the studio for a second, talk to our two panelists. We've got Dr. Russo, we've got Li Shai Lemish here. Dr. Russo, let's start with you. Tell our audience more, how can they, or anyone who's interested, help in terms of trying to end this brutal persecution?
They can keep talking to people. That is the main thing. The more people that understand what this is about and who Falun Gong is, the better. Because of everything we're seeing in the media, right? There's a lot we have to fight. But a really important thing people can do is they can sign an online petition or a hard copy petition if they come across it. They can also contact their senators. This is for the Falun Gong Protection Act. This was a bill that passed in the House in March, or I think it might have been May, and it was introduced in the Senate months ago. We only have a few co-sponsors in the Senate now, so we really need senators to co-sponsor this. So people can call their senators and say, I really want you to be able to co-sponsor this. And the senators will listen. They respond to their constituents.
That's great.
Yep.
You can support the Falun Gong Protection Act. One great way out of this day that you can help out. And Li Shai, I'd like to turn to you. We saw Pat Ryan, the congressman in the area where Shen Yun is headquartered. Shen Yun, of course, founded by Falun Gong practitioners, facing tremendous headwinds from all different types of bomb threats and crazy things happening. What can people do if they want to support Shen Yun?
Well, I think, first of all, getting to know what we're really about, who these people are, why we do, what drives the performers beyond the headlines. You know, some of the performers had family members walking in the parade today. Others have family members in China in prison still. We just have a new article on our website about the performers. There's 92 of them who've been directly affected in their family by the persecution. So when they're dancing, when they're showing the persecution of Falun Gong practitioners in China, they're really dancing for their family members. They're dancing for those other Falun Gong practitioners. And here we saw in the parade people from all over the world who came together on their own dime to speak out. But for every person here, and you know, these people endured the heat and and all the sacrifice they made, there's what, 100, 1,000, 10,000 people just like them in China, you know, in the darkness of night, handing leaflets from door to door, putting them in people's mailboxes, putting balloons up on trees, going to Tiananmen Square and getting arrested, you know, writing articles about family members who were persecuted so the world will know. And those people right now have no voice. And so trying to give those people a voice, I think, is what Shen Yun is also doing. So in a way, part of this bigger family. But I think people want to know more about Shen Yun, go to shenyunperformingarts.org or shenyun.org to learn more. And then I would say writing to your government officials to support the Falun Gong Protection Act in Senate especially would be tremendous. And if you want to just be part of this phenomena, this renaissance of Chinese culture that is also about human rights, go see Shen Yun. We'll be touring again in December.
Well, you certainly will not be disappointed if you go and do that. Lishai Lemish from Shen Yun Performing Arts and Dr. Russo from Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting. We thank you so much for joining us today for this very important parade.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. And with that, let's tune back into the parade. We're taking a live look now at Washington, D.C., Pennsylvania Avenue. The parade is nearing its tail end, Carrie.
Almost there, almost there. Yeah, in the heat, they've come from all over the country and in some cases the world, because on this memorial of July 20th, they want to gather and mark 26 years of a brutal, unjustified persecution of Falun Gong.
And we're seeing another little parader there, probably beside his dad. Once again, look at that, those signs saying, eliminate the CCP to save America. This really ties into the panel discussion we had been having earlier about this transnational repression and how really the Chinese Communist Party's actions abroad are not just a threat to religious minorities or to political dissidents. It's a threat to American values.
Yeah, some of these banners are stand up against the demon of communism and
yes.
End the CCP. You know, these are very direct, very direct banners showing, again, what the future of China could hold.
You know, that's really what a lot of these practitioners are waiting for, seeing what a future free China would look like.
Yeah, you mentioned Cynthia, you know, the persecution started when she was just a baby and now she's gotten through grad school. 26 years, multiple generations, families torn apart, wanting to go back to China, wanting to go back where they're not allowed to go back for their safety, and they want that homecoming.
And you know, Lishai mentioning there that terrible story of one of those, Ellie Rao, the principal dancer, losing your father at 4 years old, watching your father be dragged out of your home by police officers, and that's the last memory you have of your father.
Unbelievable, just unbelievable. And what a purpose-driven life she has now, dancing on the world stages.
Yes.
Being able to communicate that. Success is always the best revenge, isn't it?
It is.
And what a success she and Shen Yun are.
So we're nearing the end of the parade. This parade has gone on for, how long has it been, Carrie? About an hour. An hour in the sweltering DC heat. That's no small feat.
No, it's not. But they come every year to mark this occasion at really what would be the center of the world when it comes to democracy and freedom.
Very symbolic. And there we go. There's the Chinese and English on that banner, 9 commentaries on the Communist Party, a book published by Epoch Times. Highly recommend that read if you're into learning more about what's going on in China.
And the follow-up to it, even potentially more accessible for people in the West, how the specter of communism is ruling the world. And it really describes the tactics that the communist sort of specter, if you will, uses to sort of worm its way in through all different types of tricks. It describes it as a specter, something that is like an evil.
That's right.
Like a cancer.
And those flags we see there in those pastel hues, every single one saying 退党 or 九平, 退党, of course, as you asked me earlier, Carrie, meaning quit the party.
They got a word for it. I love it.
九评 meaning 9 commentaries in relation to that book.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You know, they say, of course, the pen is mightier than the sword. But really, this one book, the 9 commentaries, and then its follow-up, How the Spectre is Ruling the World, it's really created just a groundswell inside and outside of China.
I'm going to cut you off there just for a sec, Carrie. That scene, oh, they cut away, but that scene there, well, that was a beautiful shot, wouldn't you say? The Capitol in the back, the colorful flags, the one stoic practitioner standing in the center.
They're trying to find it for you again. But this is a fast-moving parade. It's like here today, gone tomorrow, you know?
Now, I think I just saw a banner there, Carrie, that I think has a really important message. It says, the Chinese Communist Party does not equal China.
And this is something that I think Li Shai was exploring, that Shen Yun really looks to present China before communism. What the Communist Party attempts to do is equate itself with the Chinese people, but the 9 commentaries helps them extricate themselves because China has 5,000 years of culture.
And we're seeing there, once again, the tail, and we're really coming to the end here of the parade. It's been, I must say so, pretty successful rally and parade, wouldn't you say, Carrie?
I think so, yeah. The speakers really motivated and gave a sense of appreciation for what these people have come here to do. And yeah, an absolute success. And hopefully that culminates in their passage of the Falun Gong Protection Act. Already cleared the House. Now it goes to the Senate. So if you're looking for a way you can support today's events, you can just call your senator and say, I'd like you to sign on to the Falun Gong Protection Act.
Nothing more American than calling up your senator.
Yeah, that's right. They have a great website for that.
That's right.
It'll tell you who your senator is.
Still looking there at those banners for the 9 commentaries on the Communist Party. And you know, Carrie, one time I was reporting on one of these parades, one of the onlookers was so touched she was crying.
Oh my goodness.
She was, you know, she was crying her eyes out. She was so touched by the dedication of the practitioners.
Well, the parade is winding down, and I think we're gonna pan away now. And that's going to conclude our coverage of this year's rally and parade to end the persecution of Falun Dafa in Washington, D.C.
That's right. We wanted to thank our guests who have already left now, but once again, we had a very great panel today, Carrie.
That's right. And from all of us at NTD, thank you so much for tuning in on this important occasion. I'm Carrie Dunst.
And I'm Fiona G.
I'm going to leave you now with some highlights of this year's rally.
It is you and not the CCP. It is you and not the CCP who define the distinctive features of the Chinese people, the Chinese identity, the Chinese spirit and soul. As a fellow human rights defender, let me assure you that you have our full admiration and support. Falun Gong practitioners have suffered abysmal human rights violations that have no place in the 21st century. Such systematic, targeted, widespread human rights abuses shock the conscience of mankind. Despite having suffered tremendous loss, against all odds, Falun Gong practitioners have managed to preserve and cherish their identity and bypass one of the world's most repressive, most sophisticated systems of coercion, control, surveillance, and punishment. More than a quarter century after the start of the massive CCP campaign and purge aimed at its extermination, Falun Gong has survived and struggled on. Freedom to choose one's beliefs and religion, to live by one's code of religious, political, cultural, moral, and ethical values, to improve one's spiritual well-being through exercise, meditation, and moral improvement. These are all fundamental human rights. Your resilience, your tenacity, and your relentless struggle bring hope to all of us. The struggle will be long, strenuous, and dangerous. And truth, compassion, tolerance, and human rights will always prevail.
I served as a U.S. Army officer, risked my life for this great country for many reasons, but central to that was what we're all here today to talk about, which is freedom. I'm especially honored to be with you all today because I proudly represent the global headquarters of the Falun Gong movement in Dragon Springs, in Orange County, in New York, north of New York City. I've had the privilege of visiting many times, spending time with a whole host of community members and leaders and practitioners, and it is such a special place, not only physically beautiful, but morally and spiritually such a rich and beautiful place. And it's my great honor to represent that, and by extension, I would argue to represent all of you in some small way and the work that you're doing. Your unwavering adherence to the values that we see here so powerfully today of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance truly serve as a beacon for everyone in our great country of the United States of America, certainly everyone in my district in the Hudson Valley, and I would argue every human around the world. Those values and your work to advance them is a beacon at a very difficult and dangerous time. I'm so proud to have co-led critical, pivotal, bipartisan legislation, the Falun Gong Protection Act. It's the landmark piece of legislation in the Congress to codify those protections and to hold accountable the egregious violations against the Falun Gong community that will not be tolerated, specifically to stand united, to hold organ traffickers, who you all know have been systematically for decades conducting these incredibly grave violations of human rights, to hold them accountable fully for their reprehensible crimes, and to make a statement that in the United States of America and around the world, we will not tolerate those actions. I was very honored last year, and I had my whole team, my whole congressional staff, we were warmly welcomed at a performance of Shen Yun just on the other side of D.C. At the Kennedy Center. My wife was there as well. And I just want to commend the community. And I know many of those great performers train at Dragon Springs in the district, and I've been able to see them, their dedicated practice and discipline and their values on display. That was such a special moment for me and my staff and my family, a spectacular demonstration of why we must preserve the rich arts, culture, and history of Falun Gong and traditional Chinese culture, and why practitioners of Falun Gong, so admirably committed to inner peace, deserve to live freely and without fear. So I want to especially commend those performers and reiterate my commitment that Shen Yun should and must be able to perform in every corner of the United States and around the world, and we'll continue to fight to make sure that that happens.
For more than 25 years, United States Commission on International Religious Freedom has recommended, we recommended, that the U.S. State Department designate China as a country of particular concern, for it is particularly severe violations of religious freedom, including violations against Falun Gong practitioners. Year after year, harrowing stories of the Chinese government's abuses against Falun Gong practitioners repeat themselves. We have seen surveillance. We have seen harassment, fines, detentions. We have seen imprisonment and torture, medical neglect, dehumanizing treatment, and even death. In December, China sentenced a husband and wife to 10 years in prison, each for possessing and sharing Falun Gong materials. In April of this year, a 71-year-old Falun Gong practitioner died in Chinese prison, reportedly following complications from torture. So torture is going on in China prisons against the Falun Gong practitioners. So, dear friends, freedom of religion or belief is a right all countries must preserve and protect. And the United States must continue to lead as a powerful voice for all those who live under religious repression.
The CCP attacks Shen Yun along with Falun Gong, and that represents a grave escalation of methods of infiltration to subvert Falun Gong's voice and influence, warning America about the CCP and threats to freedom. Shen Yun is a powerful, effective conveyor of truth because it transcends factual information and statistics. The power of art in advocacy seems to have been discovered, unfortunately, by the CCP. So they are targeting the creative and beautiful work of Shen Yun, which is described as follows. Shen Yun showcases the beauty and spiritual depth of authentic Chinese culture before it was almost destroyed by communism. So we really need to stop that kind of escalation. One of the methods used by the CCP to demonize Falun Gong and Shen Yun is the New York Times newspaper. The New York Times investigation of Falun Gong and Shen Yun is appalling.
In 2024, we learned of the first known survivor of China's forced organ harvesting, Qing Peiming, a Falun Gong practitioner who discovered that segments of his liver and a portion of his lung had been surgically removed while in prison. This confirmed what has been documented for years, that the CCP operates one of the world's largest organ transplant programs while having extremely low rates of voluntary organ donation. This persecution has expanded beyond China's borders and beyond Falun Gong practitioners alone. The CCP is now collecting genetic data from Uyghurs as part of a forced halal organ transplant program with DNA-matched so-called donors. Most alarmingly, the CCP plans to triple the number of organ harvesting facilities in Xinjiang by 2030. We must remain vigilant as China's persecution of Falun Gong extends far beyond its borders. Chinese authorities regularly engage in transnational repression, including within the United States. We sadly see that the repression against Falun Gong practitioners has ramped up with fines, home raids, and detentions across the globe.
For over 25 years, the Falun Gong has been the proverbial canary in the coal mine, warning those who would listen of the toxic danger of the Chinese Communist Party. For the Falun Gong, the persecution was not a difference in degrees, for the oppression has always been constant. And of all the human rights abuses inflicted upon the Falun Gong, there is one that stands out more than any other: forced organ harvesting. We at the CECC, under Chris Smith's leadership, have focused extensively on revealing this crime. Once again, this Congress, the House of Representatives, passed the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act of 2025, H.R. 1503, authored by CECC co-chairman Chris Smith and joined by Representative Keating of Massachusetts. The bill would bar entry by perpetrators of forced organ harvesting and subject them to sanctions. It would also require the Secretary of State to report on organ transplant abuses.